Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Super Game Brothers podcast, our weekly family-friendly. I haven't been adding that to the beginning, but this is a family-friendly podcast with our family-friendly YouTube channel. Getting a little off topic, but to our weekly family-friendly video game and board game podcast that I do every day with my brother, hence the name Super Game Brothers. My name's David, and I'm joined by my brother Devin today on this wonderful Wednesday. How are you on this alliteration-filled, wonderful Wednesday?
Alliteration-filled. I don't know what that means.
I think, if I'm not using the word incorrectly, an alliteration is a phrase that's where each word in the phrase starts with the same sound, like the same letter, or like wonderful Wednesday. We went on the wonderful Wednesday to Walmart. I don't know.
Oh. Maybe I can answer that in an alliteration.
Oh, wow.
I'm amazing.
Amazing, yeah. That sounds like it'd be an app on the App Store. Amazing. If you want to have an amazing day, come join us and work for Amazing. Solving.
I'd work there.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing good. What have I been up to? I feel like I've been pretty busy. I've been focusing on my fitness quite a bit.
Like
been
Fergie.
eating a ton of food, like a ton of dairy, which is probably not good for me. But just trying to gain weight and lifting. What else have I been doing? Streaming a lot. I went on a mountain bike ride with Dad. And typically, I'm like, no, I don't want to go. That sounds exhausting. But I've been lifting a lot, and I feel like it was super easy for me. Usually I'm so winded. I'm tasting pennies. My lungs are bleeding. I'd nearly die. But this time it just wasn't bad.
Nice.
That was super fun. We had 3 miles of just downhill. Oh, so nice. And he has those nice bikes. It was
For anyone that doesn't know, which is basically everyone because no one would know, our dad is one of the biggest mountain biking fanatics that I know. He probably does 50 miles a week or something. I don't know. He goes basically every morning
at least.
Yeah.
He's not going as much, but
okay,
he'll get back to it, I assume.
Yeah, and he helps coach our siblings' high school mountain biking teams and stuff. He's big into it. Mountain biking with him is intimidating because he is a robot that doesn't get tired. He's just whoop, 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 up the mountain, and you're dead after 100 feet, or at least I am. But that was probably a good feeling though, to do a ride and feel good, like you weren't winded or destroyed.
Yeah, it was honestly way fun. It was 55 degrees, or yeah, something like that, and it was amazing. It really, really was super fun.
Yeah, 55 degrees. That's kind of warm for the weather we've been having lately. We've had snow here in Utah the last 5 days.
Sure have. I don't know where that came from. I was laying out on the deck trying to get a skin tan 2 weeks ago, and then it was snowing yesterday. And so I put the stockings out and we set up the tree and stuff.
Yeah, it was weird. Santa came again.
Yeah, he didn't come to my house, but we set up the tree. No, weird weather. I don't know. I don't really mind it because I'm inside all day and work from home streaming. So
yeah, me too. Other than I'm kind of weird with the thermostat at the Bailey household. In the fall, we try to hold off as long as possible before turning on the heater. And so we'll let the house get real cold until late October, early November. But then I kind of have the same thing in the spring where I wait as long as possible to turn the air conditioner on. And since the weather's been so up and down, we waited to turn the air conditioner on till April or something. But then it started snowing again, and I was like, well, I can't go back in time and turn the heater back on. So it got way cold in our house again, and I did have to turn the heater back on because I was just freezing in this office working. So
you have embraced full dad mode now.
Yeah, for reals. I even have an app that lets me keep track of how many hours per day that the furnace was on. set like temperatures. I can push a shortcut button on my phone and it'll switch to away mode.
Okay, that's amazing. But how much do you think it's saving you a year? Is it actually a pretty good amount doing that?
The app seems to think so, but I don't know. I doubt it.
The app seems to think you could buy another home at this point.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thermostat, those are fun. Basically, every part of owning a house is not very fun, but it's nice to have one to live in. I don't know. But yeah, kind of cold. I've also been very busy in different ways. I had a work conference last week. That's why we recorded so early last week. We recorded last Monday. So we've had, 9 days since recording, when it's usually pretty on the nose, Wednesday to Wednesday. So lots of news and stuff this week because of those 2 extra days and just a lot going on. But yeah, other than that, I got kind of a new responsibility at church, which has been busy. We had our 7-year-old started basketball, so we've had some basketball games that are fun to watch. Basically, lots of traveling and double dribbling for 30 straight minutes, and that's about it.
Speaking of basketball,
yeah.
If any listeners in here, who's going to win it all? I think we're going Timberwolves and Celtics. Can that even happen? I don't know. But if it can, those teams are both very good.
Yeah, and that can definitely happen.
Ant-Man, a.k.a. I don't know his real name. They call him Ant-Man. He is something else.
Anthony Edwards.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. He is very good. What did he score? 41 points or something in the first game against Denver? He's nuts.
He really is. And Jalen Brunson, is that his name? Jalen Brunson?
On the Knicks?
On the Knicks? Fantastic basketball player.
Yeah, he's very good. And which is surprising, he's, for a basketball player at least, he's not very tall. He's probably 6 feet, maybe 5'11". I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell on a basketball court because you got the guy that's 7'7", and then the guy that's 6'7" looks like, he's half a foot tall compared to him. But
yeah,
he's very good. He's very crafty. He was on the Mavericks with Luka for a while, but I think he's been with the Knicks for maybe 2 seasons now.
Oh, yeah, he's 6'2".
6'2", okay.
Stephen Curry's height.
Yeah, that makes sense. 6'2", man. I'm 6'5". In another life, I could have been shooting shots out there with Steph, making millions. Instead,
I couldn't. For some reason, I didn't get any height.
I don't know. Instead, why. I'm here in a tiny little office talking about board games, and got a shelf full of cardboard and wood behind me, and a big old computer and a console full of digital fake video game worlds. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Except I would like to be, rich this way too. That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, money's stupid, but it would also be awesome to have a lot of it.
Yeah, it would be nice. But yeah, lots going on. NBA playoffs are fun to watch. I haven't really watched any just because of how busy we've been in evenings, like prepping social media stuff and recording, playing games. Played some more Prince of Persia and Balatro last night, which was fun. And then, doing the podcast and editing. Editing is a whole other thing. I'm getting kind of fast at it. I won't say good, because I don't know that my edits are good. But I can do them faster. I know where to click, where to move the mouse. After I hit export, I start a stopwatch on my phone until the export is 1% done. Then I multiply that amount of seconds that I counted by 100. And then divide it by 60 to see, okay, how many minutes is this export going to take? And then I go do something for that amount of time, come back, export is usually about done. So, I got it down to like a dumb little science that...
I think we need the science to keep consistency up. That's the reason I don't edit videos, is because I don't have a system. So I'm just like, I don't feel like learning all of that right now, so I'm not going to make a video, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like systems, even though it is time-consuming to make the system. And then it is still time-consuming to make the content, even after you have the system. Just less time-consuming, I think. But I don't know. Who knows? Well, Devin, I am glad you're doing well. You're in the cold and sometimes warm, but sometimes cold of Utah. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today. Lots of video game news, lots of board game news. We played some board games this last week. We played some video games this last week, so lots to chit-chat about. Before we get started, just want to do a quick call out to Patreon. Please join us over there. We have a free tier where you can just join and follow, and you get some exclusive videos over there just for being a free joiner, a free follower, whatever you want to call it. So just check us out over there on patreon.com/supergamebrothers. We do have all kinds of other perks. If you want to do anything beyond the free level, you can, for a couple dollars a month, you get an extra exclusive video. For $3 a month, you can write into the show. We got an inquiry today from a listener that we're going to go over. You can get the shows early, get your name in the credits, all kinds of stuff. But at least come join us for free. It'd be nice to have a few more people commenting on posts and stuff. So check us out over there on Patreon. And then check out Super Game Brothers on YouTube as well. We also have social media accounts on Instagram and TikTok. So go like all our videos. That'll help us get pushed out to new friends. Appreciate you for that, and appreciate you for listening to this podcast. It's tricky to plan and tricky to record, and some days we don't feel like we're very good at it. But it is fun even to know that, like, there's one soul out there, maybe on the other side of the world, maybe just down the street, listening. Kind of fills my day with joy. So anyways, on that note, that kind of sounded like the introduction to Reading Rainbow. We will get right into the show. So we're going to start with what we've been playing, like we usually do. I think we'll start with, let's just totally mix it up. We're going to start with board games today. Holy cow. I don't know what we're going to do.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, such a big change. I'm all flabbergasted. I've played 2 board games this last week. One of them I played with you, Devin. So I thought maybe let's talk about that one first, since we'll both be able to talk about it. And then I can talk about the one that I played a couple nights ago with some friends. So first up, I played Revive at a game night I had last Tuesday. And then Devin came over and we played it again. This is Revive right here. And look, this time Devin can see. The camera's not frozen.
This is wonderful for
me. I know. What a world. Revive was a very popular board game, I think early in 2023, maybe late 2022. It's kind of a complicated board game. Board games are rated on a scale from 1 to 5 for their complexity level. They usually call it the weight of the game. Like a game is heavy if it's complicated, and a game is light if it's simple. I think they did that because like a board game that's complicated will have more pieces usually, so the box will be bigger and the box will be heavier. So that's probably why it got that name to begin with. But on the heaviness level, I think Revive is around a 3, which is, medium to starting to medium heavy, depending on how experienced you are with board games. So there's a bit going on in this game. In the game, has some cool artwork. The theme is really almost non-existent, but you are kind of restoring this world 5,000 years after an apocalyptic event has happened. And you do that by each taking your own little faction. And you have your own faction board here with these 3 technology tracks that kind of interweave. Looks like a lot there, but it's really not too bad. They could just be vertical tracks, but they kind of made them wrap around in a weird like circle pattern so that they could loop together. And then there's the main board in the middle where you will be putting out civilization centers and kind of expanding out from the middle cave where you awoke from cryosleep. It's kind of a card game at heart. It's a little unique in that you have cards, and then on your first turn you'll draw 3, and they will be your hand, and the other 3 cards in your deck will stay face down as your cards in hibernation. And then every few turns you will swap. That was a loud P. Swap hands from the hand you have and the hand that's in hibernation. And so it's not normal deck building in that you don't just have like one deck. that you're adding cards to. You have 2 hands that you're adding cards to, and generally cards don't move back and forth between the hands. Every once in a while, but it's kind of rare. So managing those 2 little small hands of cards is kind of the name of the game. You put cards underneath or on top or above your player board to do different actions, and then those actions will let you do stuff, get resources, build buildings out on the main board, and you're doing all of that with, like most modern board games, with the goal of getting as many victory points as possible. Like I said, I played this game twice in the last week, but I've owned it for like a year, and just haven't gotten around to play it. It's on my shelf of shame, is generally what that's called. Some more optimistic people sometimes call it the shelf of opportunity, but I'm not against the shelf of shame name, because I am a little ashamed sometimes of the 50 games that I haven't played yet. But anyways, I was really glad to get this one played. Someone at my game group taught it to me, so that was nice as well, to not have to be the one reading the rulebook and checking all of that when we were starting. But I really like this game. I don't know why, kind of mechanically, it just kind of clicks with me, even though it's a weird kind of mechanism of swapping those hands of cards between rounds. There's so few cards in your deck. You start with 6 cards. At the end of the game, you might have 12 to 15, like max, cards between your 2 hands. So it's not like you're having to remember a million cards. And the way that they like slot in the tops or the bottom of your board, and you move up those different tracks on your board, and the board is really cool, because as you move up those different tracks, you're removing these blue discs from the board to symbolize how far up on the track you are. And when you remove those, you're uncovering all these awesome things. If it's a slot, you get to fill that slot from these tokens that are on the board, and you get to choose, like, oh, I want this slot to be filled with this, so that my actions are different than Devin's, and you get to do all these bonus actions with these cool lightning bolt pieces. But yeah, Revive, I really, really like it. I want to play it a couple more times before I review it on my gaming top-down board game channel, but I think it will get a really good review from me, even though, like I mentioned, the theme is almost non-existent, other than I think the artwork is pretty cool. It's very sci-fi kind of vibes, but it's really a mechanical game in that I put a card here, do this, build a building. There's, not really a lot of, or really any, unless you do read like the campaign cards, but most people don't play with them. Like any story or like choices, like I'm not going here to fight a dragon to save like a town member for them to give me some coins and then their grandma to tell me thank you or something. I'm building a building here, and because I did that, I get 3 points, and I get a gear, and on my next turn I'll get to do this and this. Anyways, I really like Revive. Really glad that we played it twice this week. I played it 4 players at my game group, and then me and you played a 2-player game, which I didn't know if I would like quite as much, but I thought it was basically just as good. You're just a little more free, and there's a little less fighting over the board. But what'd you think of Revive, Devin? You've played some complex games with me, but it's probably one of the more complicated games that I've had you play.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I have a lot of thoughts about the game. I love how everything fits together. The cards fit very seamlessly into your playboard. You actually do so much setup with this game, creating the entire bigger board that we both play on and set meeples and colonies on, or whatever you're putting on the main board.
Yeah, lots of face down like land pieces, and then as you explore, you flip them over to see what's on the other side. Yep.
Yeah, you have to like set it all up before you start, and
yeah, a bit of setup for sure.
Yeah, but it was kind of cool to see, kind of fun because it's random. I also liked the game. I'm not as good at describing board games as you are, but there's so many different ways to play. I played completely different than you did. I focused on a main strength of my character, hardly even touched the main board of the game, kept my initial 6 cards that I got at the very start, maybe added 1 or 2 is all. And then, like you said, the customization of your board so that I have different abilities than you, that was my favorite part of the game. So cool. It's like making a build in a video game. Like adding a point into your special perks in Fallout 4, which is slowly becoming my addiction in this life.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the strong parts of the game for sure. It's not quite as, what do they call it, asymmetrical as something like Root, because in Root you start like completely differently than the other players. In Revive, you start at basically the same kind of spot as everyone else with one specific special power that your faction has. But then as the game goes on and you unlock more of those slots on your board, you get to, through kind of the ramp up of the game and deciding what you want to focus on, then you get to specialize down a path. And I kind of like that. It's cool. Kind of start from a similar spot and then all the players branch out a different way. Instead of, like I mentioned, in something like Root, where we start at very different spots and are basically in those very different spots the whole time. So I did like that about it. It makes it easier to teach than something like Root as well, because when you teach Root, you basically have to teach like 4 different games. Okay, Devin's going to be playing like this, but we can't let him do this, and he needs to know how to do this. And then David's going to be doing something different. You need to stop me from doing this, and this is how I score points, which is different from how you score points. Root's one of my favorite games, so I don't want to put any shade on it, but that is definitely the hurdle with Root, is the teaching factor. Because
yeah, that reminds me of the small difficulties in Dice Throne. Like, you need to know all of my abilities, because if you're trying to teach me and I'm like, well, what is this? And you're like, I don't really know how that character works. I've never played them. It's always completely different.
Yeah, and Dice Throne's probably somewhere in the middle of those two extremes, but yeah, I agree. Because in Dice Throne, if you know how to play Dice Throne, like just kind of the core, you could probably figure out a character in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I get your point. Yeah, Revive, man, I really like it. There's an expansion. As soon as we were done playing that night, I Googled the crap out of that thing. I was like, where can I buy this expansion? And it's out of stock from the stores I usually buy expansions from, so we'll have to wait a little bit on that. But I think the expansion has mainly like 4 or 6 new factions, which are kind of the cool part. Because I really think to win in that game, you really need to focus on your faction's like special perk. You could probably win by not focusing on it, but that is your one like edge or advantage over the other players, at least from the get-go. And so if you don't focus on that, at least
it a star ability, and I went heavily into that, and ended up winning, playing the game in a very strange way.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, more factions I think would be cool in that game, and I think it does add some more stuff. I think the point track, where you unlock those different perks every 5 points, the expansion also adds a new track to the left of that, and I can't remember what for, but I want to check that out. I think it's called Revive Into the Abyss or Out of the something like that. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, Revive, really great game. I know a lot of people have really enjoyed it since it came out. It was a pretty popular one, so I don't think that is news to people in the board game hobby, but it's kind of reinforcing to know, okay, I think that the people on Board Game Geek kind of know what they're talking about most of the time. Revive is pretty dang great. Cool. Oh yeah, and I guess just a shout out. Devin and I, we like we mentioned, we played Revive. We actually recorded it, and it was our episode of Super Game Brothers Advance this week, which launches on Tuesdays. It is our supplemental show to this show that you can get access to again on Patreon. So check that out.
Yeah, it should give you a good idea if you actually want to get the game or not.
Yeah.
Which we will also link, I'm certain of it.
Yeah, you can. There's a link to the game in the description of that video for sure. All right, the other game I played, I was kind of in this Revive kick, and I was like, ooh, I had some other friends coming over for game night a couple nights ago. Should we play Revive a third time? And I decided to play a different game. It's a little similar in a couple ways in that you're kind of exploring on this board and building out your own path, but it does play quite a bit differently. It's called Tapestry, And it's a game from Stonemaier Games, the same company that does a lot of popular games, Scythe and Wingspan. I have my Stonemaier shelf here. You can see the missing hole where Tapestry was. And I've got Apiary and Wingspan and Libertalia there, and I have Red Rising down here. And Rolling Realms. So I have quite a few of their games. This is Tapestry. It's a huge box, so I probably won't keep it up here very long. It has awesome art. I think the art's by Andrew Bosley. It says it right there. He is a very popular artist. Him and Vincent Dutray are probably two of the most popular. Anyways, great art. This game it says a civilization game right here under Tapestry, and it kind of is, but I feel like it's a little more mechanical than most civilization games. In this game, you have your own player board, kind of, similar to Revive. You have your own board, and then you have a main board where you're exploring, and you do some exploring and even some conquesting to topple other people's control of certain spots on that main board. But then most of the stuff that you care about is happening on your board. And it's a really simple game. On every turn, you can do one of two things. You can push your civilization to a new era, which you can only do 5 times, and then you are done with the game. So you only do that really when you've run out of resources and have to. And you put these cool tapestry cards down here on your, I forget what that's called, civilization mat or something. And the first one's printed on that says like Makers of Fire. So your civilization starts from people that created fire, and then you can kind of dictate what direction they go. The next one might, I don't know what all of them are, but mine was, I can't remember exactly what they were called. I think like Hierarchy, and then there was one, it was called Mutiny, I think. I don't. There were different cards you can put down that kind of sculpt the direction that your civilization goes in. And each era, that'll be a new card that might give you a special bonus for the era. You're also building out the capital city of your civilization here on this kind of Sudoku-shaped grid. And there's these really cool buildings. There's these landmark buildings that are really big, cool painted buildings. And then these smaller, like food and armory buildings as well. And you're trying to get as many of those to fill in your capital city as possible. You have your own asymmetric player with some special power as well. I was the architects. I did very, very poorly. I'll talk about that in a minute, but there's 16 of those different factions in the game, which is a pretty high number for a base game. This game has like 3 or 4 expansions at this point. I think it came out in 2019, so I'm a little late to the Tapestry party, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really solid game. I really struggled for some reason. I feel like, I'm not the best at board games in the world, but I feel like I'm generally pretty competent at them. So even if I'm not winning, like I'm having a good time, I'm at least competitive. I might lose by 20 points, but that's fine. I still scored 150 and it was a good time. Man, this one I really struggled with. I don't know if it was my faction, the Architects, that I just didn't vibe with or something. But at the end of the game, my wife had 290 points and I had 70.
Wow.
Probably the biggest point disparity I've ever seen in a game. And yeah, I don't know. She just figured out her faction really, really well, and basically every tapestry card that she played down paired with those really well. And so I think a focus I would have next time is making sure that I'm drawing more tapestry cards so I have more options, because I felt a little stuck and that my turns just weren't amounting to anything. But it's a fun game. I like that you can go down very different paths. In the middle of the board are 4 different tracks. There's a science, military, exploration, and technology track, and you get to decide which one you're really going to focus on. And by the end of the game, Lacey's civilization had expanded and explored space, and so she had these special space tiles next to her player board, and some space shuttle pieces on her capital city map. And I had 5 tiny little baby buildings, and she had built the most elaborate thing ever. So it was really cool in that way. The factions are definitely pretty asymmetric. So yeah, Tapestry, really cool. I feel like with as much variability as that one has, because I feel like you start in a more different of a starting point than your opponents than you do in Revive. I want to play it a few more times before I decide if it's a keeper or not. But after that first play, I was like, man, I think this game's really solid. I also don't know why I scored so few points and why I just got absolutely crushed.
At least the pieces are super cool looking. I'm looking at them now.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're very
I love
cool.
the colors.
Yeah. On those 4 tracks I mentioned that are here on the board, they're broken into like 4 different eras or sections. If you're the first person to get to the next section, then you unlock a landmark building. And that's what these 18 big ones are. And so Lacey got like, this space shuttle. My wife got this space shuttle one. And there's like this nuclear reactor and like all kinds of cool buildings. So it's kind of a hefty box and kind of a pricey game because it comes with all those miniatures. And then there are 20 little buildings on each player mat. So there's 80 more little buildings. Then you have all these cubes and stuff. You can probably get base Tapestry for $50 or $60 now. I think it was more expensive like when it first came out, but so it's not, and you can see it's probably double as wide as like most, well, maybe not double, but 150% as wide as most standard box board games are. So it's kind of big, kind of heavy, kind of expensive. I don't know that Revive is probably any cheaper though, so it's probably kind of standard price for a kind of a medium weight board game nowadays. So yeah, Verdict's still out on Tapestry. I had fun playing, really enjoyed playing. I think the game's simple to play. Your turns are pretty easy. Turns go fast. And seeing what everybody else did and all the cool buildings that they were building on their capital cities was a good time. I just 70 points and I'm I don't know what happened. In the rule book, we were just about to score and I was looking up a couple things just to make sure I scored everything right. And there was a little sentence that said, just so you know, a great score in this game is about 300 points. And as soon as I read that and I was at like 55 at that point, I was like, okay, I'm in big trouble. So yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm also, I don't know that I've mentioned this on the podcast yet. I'm a data analyst professionally. And so I love like organization and like numbers and tracking things. So I keep track of every time I've played a game in this cool app that syncs with Board Game Geek, kind of the biggest board game database in the world. And so I log them on my phone and like put in the scores and who was playing and what date did we play, how long did we play for, and then I can track all the stats about that later and stuff. And logging my 70 score and my wife's 290 score, that hurt a little bit for sure. But you can't win them all. But that was Tapestry. It was a good time. Want to play it some more. And I have this bad habit. Right after I play a board game, I like immediately look up the expansions just to see like what they add. Because once you've played it, you kind of have the context of like what is there, and so you can see like what the expansion is going to add, and those expansions look pretty cool. But I don't know, we'll see. Can't get those until I get a 3D printer, because with a 3D printer I can print an insert that will hold everything in the base box. But if you don't print your own insert, then I don't think you can store everything effectively in a single box. So anyways, just lots to think about there. But yeah, Tapestry and Revive for me this week, with 2 plays of Revive, which were both really great. At this point, I really like Revive better, but Tapestry seems to have more variability. Just with 16 factions instead of, I think there were 6 or 8 of those Revive boards. Those are double-sided though, so I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself out of that right now as we speak, but really good board games this week. For video games, I think we're basically playing the same things that we have been. So I don't know that we'll have tons of updates. But Devin, I'm going to let you tell us anything new that you maybe want to about Fallout, and then we can get into the news.
Ooh, Fallout 4. It just came out.
Yeah.
10 years ago. When did it come out? 2015? Did we talk about this? 2017?
I think so. I think it was 2015 maybe.
Man, I missed out on a good game. Holy crud. If I would have started playing it back then, I'd have 3,000 hours in it. I really would. What a deep game that rewards you for playing slow and just getting immersed in it. I mean, I don't know what I can say about the game that I haven't already. We were streaming it. We've been streaming it a lot. A girl bought us one of the DLCs today. And so that we'll be playing that. So we're not going to end Fallout 4 anytime soon. But super funny. I looked into some of the mods today, added a mod that like puts a bunch of shrubbery and green grass and makes it look like it's spring. And I tried it for a second, but it lowered my frame rate so drastically that I was like, no, thank you. So I took that back off. But funny game, really funny game. Everyone's got their opinion of how I should play it, their favorite weapons, their favorite faction, who I should take out and who I shouldn't take out. And I don't know. Fantastic game. I haven't played anything else as far as video games lately, but Fallout 4 is truly 10 out of 10 in my opinion.
Nice. I'm curious, since you've been playing quite a bit more, what parts of it maybe are your favorite? Is it, because I don't think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's necessarily even the story so much. It's just kind of the running around, looting, getting better stuff, building up your character build, and then just having a good time shooting and exploring. Is that a correct read on your opinion of the game?
Yeah, most people, I think, are paying heavy attention to the lore of that game.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, this person's related to them, and this guy, I don't know, did this. This guy, like, kissed his dog, and this guy, you should, I don't know. They know all this stuff about it, and I'm like, let's just spam X until the next mission. I'm more like, let's build a perfect character without cheating. We'll grind this out. Let's find every secret in the game. Make a build where every perk complements another perk in some way, and I will master the game. That's why I liked Remnant 2 so much, is because the smallest adjustments to the rings you had in your build would just make enough of a change that you could beat the game with a solid group of 3 on like the hardest difficulty. And that's what I like about Fallout, is just you can play it however you want, and it's endless. I think you can put thousands of hours into the game. You can get hundreds and hundreds of levels in, and you always have upgrades when you level up. So it's always exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a fun open world with lots of just opportunity, kind of. You can kind of do whatever you want, explore wherever you want. And if you're interested in the story, you can do that. And if not, you don't have to, and you can just kind of make your own fun. I haven't played any more Fallout 4. I do have a few segments recorded that are going up again on our Patreon. Shout out to patreon.com/supergamebrothers. But yeah, I haven't played any more Fallout 4 at this time. I do think as we transition into my next game, which again, none of these are new, I think that reason you just mentioned of loving how like the different traits of your character kind of combo off each other in Remnant, like this ring adds, I don't know, 1 damage per second if I do this, and this gun pairs perfectly with that, is one of the reasons that I love Balatro. Not to compare a card game to Fallout and Remnant, where the gameplay is very different. But man, just still love Balatro. And same idea. You can customize every card in your deck, and there's so many variations. You can use special cards to make the cards in your deck gold or glass or stone. And so it's a heart, but it's also a stone card, and it's got a gold seal on it. And so like a single card can have like 5 different attributes, and those attributes combo with the jokers that you have. And yeah, just the combo-tastic nature of all, and trying to min-max that. Like, okay, if I play all these glass cards, some of them are going to break. You have a 1 in 4 chance of that card breaking. Gold cards, if you keep them in your hand, which kind of clutters up your hand at the end of the round, then you get $3 for every gold card you have in your hand that wasn't played. So you're just kind of min-maxing all of those different variables, and there's a lot of variables in that game. I think I've played or recorded 7 different segments for our YouTube channel and probably played 12, 15 runs of that game, and I think won 4. So I'm probably only winning about a third of the time. And winning is getting past ante level 8, and each level has 3 different matches. So you have to win like 24. You can skip some if you want to, but yeah, Balatro, super great. Love it for the same reason. Just the build of your character, which in this game is a deck of cards. Super unique and almost limitless like options, because there's like 150 jokers and yeah, just so many. Like I mentioned, all the 52 cards in your deck, you can customize, trash, convert to goldstone, add a blue seal, add a purple seal. So it's just all about those combos. Very fun. Balatro, still love it. I think I'll still be playing this one in a couple years. So be ready to hear all about Balatro on the Super Game Brothers podcast for the rest of eternity. Other than that, I did play some more of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I think I'm getting closer to the end. I fought another main boss last night. Got a train going by, so my camera's shaking. So sorry, everyone, about that. I live right by a train track. But yeah, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, still really solid. I still think that the boss fights are the best part of that game. I've done 3 main boss fights at this point, and all 3 of them have been super cool. Really enjoyed them. But I feel like the game kind of lacks in some other areas. The map is surprisingly very big, which is cool for a Metroidvania game. You know, games like Hollow Knight are really cool for having a huge map. And some of the areas or the backtracking, you know, between the sections with the cool bosses are maybe a little less exciting than I'd want them to be. But yeah, just super high production values again, with everything being voice acted and the really cool boss fights and beautiful art. Really solid game. Really recommend that one. And it's been on sale pretty frequently. I got it on sale for, I think, half off. I think it's a $50 game, so I think I got it for $25 or something. So watch out for sales. You can probably get it at a discounted price as well. Just a tangent here. I'm curious, how much do you think Silk Song is going to cost when it finally does come out? Hollow Knight was only $15. But I do not think that it would be a pretty baller move to do, like, yeah, it's $15 and we know we're going to sell 20 million copies, so that's fine. But I think they could get away
20 million copies at $40
at 30 or $40. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's tempting them. So we'll see. But because I think Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is maybe a little overpriced. $50. Again, it's super high production values for a Metroidvania game, like very pretty, very fun boss fights. And at this point, I've played like 15 hours, and I've still got a ways to go. So it's not short. So I don't know. Maybe I do think video games are worth our money, but yeah, I don't know. I think I got it for $25 or $30, and I think that's like the right price for that game. All right. Let's see. I accidentally clicked something on my computer. Okay, we're back. Well, those are the board games and video games that we've been playing this week. Some really good ones. I'm excited to, keep playing Revive, play Tapestry again, and hopefully beat Prince of Persia. I think I'm getting to that point where I'm like, okay, those boss fights are really cool. I want this to wrap up in a cool way. I don't want it to last too much longer. So we'll see. Next up, introducing a new segment. I don't want to introduce too many new segments all the time, because then the podcast will just eventually be 7 hours long. But I do want to just briefly give a shout out to the new games coming out in the coming week or even weeks. This is a little tricky because I'm going to start with board games today. Board games are very tricky to nail down what the official launch release date is, because I've even had this happen where I go to pre-order a board game and I look at one store online and it says this game will release in March of 2024. I'm like, okay, cool. I just want to see if there's a better price somewhere else. So I go to a different board game shop and they say this game's coming out in June of 2024. And just again, because of shipping times and transportation and location and kind of the size of different board game shops and inventory, like even just storing all the board games for a board game shop is like, takes up space. Yeah, it's just trickier to nail down. That on Board Game Geek, again, I mention it pretty often. It's the biggest board game database in the world, biggest board game website in the world. Everyone uses it if you're in that hobby. They only show the year that a game released. They don't even show like a month or a date, which is so weird because in video games, it's like, yeah, the game released on May 10th, 2024. That's when it was out. But in board games, it's a lot trickier. So I'm still trying to nail down exactly how to do the board game releases. I've struggled to even find like a good site that has a release calendar. So I'm only going to be talking about one today. And the only reason I know about this one is because my copy's in the mail. Should be here tomorrow. I was really hoping it was going to be here before the podcast, but I'll show it to you next week, probably. It's called Sand. It's a new game by Devere. And Devere has this cool line of board games they've been doing the last few years. I don't remember if they call it their medium or small box series, but I think their idea is they put a bigger, kind of meatier game in a smaller box than you expect. And so they try to do a lot with a few components. And their most popular ones have been the Red Cathedral, Bamboo. I have Bamboo behind me. I don't think it's on screen, but Bamboo's a really cool one. Super unique. Where to take your turn, you take these little pieces of bamboo and you slide them up this column and it pushes all the rest of the bamboo up. And then you take the ones that are kind of like cut off the top as the actions that you'll take on your next turn. Super cool mechanism for a game. And yeah, I totally agree that there's a lot of game in that small box. In fact, it's kind of hard to fit it all back in the box sometimes. But and probably their most popular one came out, I think, last year, called The White Castle. And I've been really wanting to play that one, but every time I go to order it, again, it's been out of stock too. So I hope to play The White Castle soon. It just had an expansion announced for anyone that wants to play The White Castle. But Devere's newest game in this line is called Sand. And it has been, wow, it seems like it's been very hyped, which is kind of crazy for a game that isn't like a big Kickstarter game or a Stonemaier game or an Awaken Realms game. This game has been number 1 on the Board Game Geek hotness list for a couple of weeks, I think, which is a big deal to be like the most hot, like talked about game on that forum. And I don't know if Dune 2 coming out a few weeks ago, no, not weeks, a couple months ago, and kind of the renewed hype around Dune kind of is helping, because it kind of has a similar vibe, but much more cartoony. So this is a pick up and deliver game. And it seems like it kind of does the same thing. We're trying to pack kind of a bigger, meatier game in a smaller box. And in this game, you are delivering, like the genre says, you pick up goods, and in this game, they're cubes to represent flowers and different crafts and stuff. And then you move around the board to deliver them and sell them in different places, knowing that you can make more money selling this specific good at the harbor. I can make a lot more money selling this specific good over here. And you have to manage your own board that represents your own silkworm. And you ride that silkworm as like your means of transportation to get around and sell all of your goods. It's not even technically a sandworm, so I don't know why everyone keeps making that connection to Dune, but it's been like super mentioned everywhere. But yeah, I love the art. I really like it when games kind of mix, like, this is a complicated, even sometimes violent or mean or scary game, but then they pair it with artwork that is like totally opposite to that. That I think they usually call that something like a juxtaposition. And yeah, I love that. Like games like Spelunky, like super like cute, colorful artwork, and then you die on spikes and blood sprays everywhere. And the game's like incredibly difficult. And I think Sand has some of that too, from some of the early reviews that I've watched and some gameplay I've looked at. It seems pretty difficult. You like the more inventory that you're carrying on your silkworm, they cover up these slots that are the action slots that you can take. So the more inventory you're holding, makes it harder for you to move and do other things. But holding more will let you sell more and make more money, and the goal of the game is to get the most money. So it's kind of a weird balance of that, and has this cool kind of, again, data accounting person here vibe of everything I sell, I slot in these cool slots on my game board as like a history or an accounting of everything that I've sold. And as I put those in there, I'm kind of unlocking more and more perks. You can make your silkworm better. You can get different like companions. One of them is a baby silkworm that can help you hold more inventory. And so again, I like that idea of like, I've got my own player board. Nobody can mess with this. It's my stuff. And on this player board, I can decide what I'm going to do something different this game than I did last game. And then there's the center board where, we'll have a little more fighting, and you'll go to a spot that I wanted to go to first, and I'll be mad at you for 30 seconds. But yeah, I don't know, just going back to Revive and Tapestry and then Sand, which I'm really excited to try and play in the next couple days. They all kind of have that similar vibe. And that's not like super new. Most board games have like your own stuff and then the shared stuff. So that's not incredibly new, but Sand looks really cool. I think the release date is May of this year. That is, they shipped my copy last Friday. So it's going to be here, I think, tomorrow. But I think on other shops, it says it doesn't come out until June or July. So I'm again, just very confused by the release of board games. And maybe I should make that my mission in life, to like make the perfect board game release calendar. And then everyone would pay me millions of dollars to look at it, because I'm sure that's what everybody cares about the most in life. It's okay, I'm going to go buy groceries, then I need to look at David's board game release calendar.
That is the most important thing to me.
Yeah. Me too. Anyway, Sand looks really great. I'm excited. I'll show you on camera. I'll show you for the video viewers. For the audio listeners, I'll at least like slap my fingers on it so you can, hear a little bit of that cardboard goodness. The Sand looks really cool. Comes out this month, I believe. In video games, there are 3 releases this week that I thought were notable. There are tens of thousands of video games that come out every year. And so, that breaks down into like hundreds per week. And obviously we can't talk about every single one. And so kind of the big ones, or the ones that I'm interested in, are kind of the ones that make it to the list. So let me know if there's any that you think I should have included. I'll include them, next week or something. Good thing to comment. So the 3 that I notice here: Endless Ocean Luminous came out this last week. Didn't review very well. On OpenCritic, it has a 62, which they categorize as a weak score. And I didn't read any of the reviews. I think it's like a peaceful scuba diving game where you just kind of take pictures of or just look at animals. I remember having the original on the Wii, and I kind of liked like its peaceful Zen vibe. But I don't know, maybe the remaster or whatever they're calling it wasn't done very well. But just a very peaceful game. If you're looking to scuba dive and swim with some fishies, I think that might be a Switch exclusive, because I'm not sure, actually. I should have looked that up. But I only remember the original coming out on the Wii, so it might be a Nintendo kind of partnered game. Next one, I'm not sure how to pronounce. It's either Indica. It looks like a psychological horror game with kind of religion as a central topic. I think you play as a nun. It reviewed okay. Strong 77 on OpenCritic.
Ooh.
I've played a lot of games in the 70s, so...
this one's calling my name. I like my horror games.
Might be one to check out. It didn't look like it would be particularly scary, especially to someone like you who has a very high tolerance for horror. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't looked at it in tons of depth. Then the other one I wanted to call out, I'm not usually a huge fan of early access, even though I do think it helps some games, like the next one we're going to talk about. Hades 2 just launched in early access. And it is... a lot of sites like IGN and other places are giving it a preliminary review in early access because that company, what is their name? It's going to drive me nuts. It'll come to me in a minute. They make such solid games that I think even in early access for the first Hades, that people were like super impressed. even though they did add a lot of things during that early access period, it like seemed pretty like fully fledged in that state. And that seems to be the vibe here with the second one too. I think one of the quotes I read was, even on day one of early access, this game is bigger, has more stuff, and is more fully fleshed out than all of Hades, post version 1.0 and patches and stuff. So it's supposed to have a lot of content. Hades is amazing as someone that loves roguelite games. And I think probably the only roguelite game that I've ever played where like the story was super cool. I don't know how they do it, because a roguelite game, kind of by nature, somebody could beat it like 50 times faster than me in fewer runs, just by being better at the game than me. But even if you die a whole bunch, you feel like every time you come back to kind of the main hub area, there's always some cool like story stuff. You're like talking to this character, or this character's got something new for you to do. And I think it does that better than any roguelite game I've ever played, where like the way that they like trickle stuff out to you, it feels like you're not playing a roguelite, even though you are. So very excited about Hades 2. Probably won't come out to PlayStation until next year, I imagine. They'll probably be in early access for a while, but it's tempting. I want to... they did say it's Steam Deck approved, so I could play that on my Ally, and Hades 2 in my bed. That's a tempting offer, but yeah, check out Hades. If you haven't played Hades, man, and play Hades, it's amazing.
It really is such a good game.
I think it was on sale this last week for half off, so like $8. Man, other than my Mountain Dews, that's probably the best $8 you could spend, and it's probably a better $8 than the Mountain Dew. But anyway, so that is the 3 video games that I thought were notable that were coming out this week. Other than those, now we're going to get into the news. There is a lot of news this week, so I'm not going to try to do too much, just David chatting and reading. I'm going to try to pop over to Devin whenever we can. First one, we always talk about... Well, we're going to start with... you know what? Let's pull another switcheroo change up here. Let's start with the board games. We'll just, switch it up a little bit. We're going to start with board games today. In board game news, there were a few interesting things. This first one kind of continues our conversation from last week, Devin, about artificial intelligence. So this game launched on Kickstarter last week. It's called Wonders of the First, and then it kind of has this other word called under that title, Existence. So I don't know if it's Wonders of the First or Wonders of the First Existence as the title. Anyways, this game launched on Kickstarter last week. Looks kind of, like other big box games, lots of cards, lots of pledge levels. That's kind of how Kickstarter works. Like, you can get the base copy of the game. That's the standard copy that'll go to retail for $45 plus $15 shipping in a year when it's ready. Or you can buy this one that has wooden pieces for $75, or this one that comes with the expansion for $100, or this one that comes with the expansion and a playmat for $125, or this one with the playmat and painted pieces for $155, and then this one, I don't know, I can't think of another example. That's kind of the shtick of, and I'm kind of a sucker for it. I mean, we've talked about Fractured Sky recently. That was a game I got out on Kickstarter. Very solid game. I don't regret getting that one. But there's a couple where I'm like, ooh, that was a little pricey. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. And the game I'm most excited about this year is a huge Kickstarter game that was almost $200. Don't repeat that. With like tons of like enemy ships and like looks really awesome. But yeah, I don't know. Generally, I like more smaller, contained. Kind of why I'm excited for Sand from Devere. It's a big game, small box. Doesn't have a lot of extra fluff and miniatures. It's more about the game, and let's get some good art on the board. But other than that, here's some cubes and here's some dice, and that's all you need. Anyways, now I'm ranting about Kickstarter, but on Kickstarter, this game launched last week, and they'd had some controversy before launching, because I guess they just kind of admit openly that their game has a ton of cards, I think like 500 or something. And the game and the cards, all of the art on the cards in the box was made with AI assistance. And this is a new one. I hadn't heard this before. The cards in the game can be redeemed as NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which is a weird thing. NFTs kind of feel like they've already come and gone. Like they had their big moment in the sun probably 2 years ago, maybe even more than that. And I feel like nobody cares about them anymore. And all of the rich NBA stars that bought, the gorilla heads for their Twitter icons still have those, and that's about it. Anyways, this game raised a lot of money over about a week, $1.4 million. And kind of the weird part about it is it seems like a lot of people were buying it because they... this quote here from Board Game Wire kind of sums it up really well. When the project launched, $400,000 was quickly pledged. I think on the project it says like funded in 26 minutes or seconds. I can't remember. So it was funded like immediately. And their top tier pledge, like I just gave you those examples of $50, $75, $125. There's usually like a $200 or $300 tier in a modern board game. If you want, like, even Dice Throne does that. Like if you want this battle chest and the last battle chest and the battle chest before it and every playmat, and you can basically the entire Dice Throne collection, you can get that here too in the Kickstarter for $300. I broke up the quote. Here's the quote. When the project launched, $400,000 was quickly pledged to the project by around 50 backers of its top tier supernova reward level, each pledging over $8,000, leading to suggestions that the project had been inundated with speculators or people that are buying it, hoping that they can sell it for, way more than that later because they got one of those limited tiers. $8,000 tier, that's nuts. So ridiculous. Anyway, so this Kickstarter campaign is making a whole bunch of money. Kickstarter decides, I don't know if they just decided or if this has been a rule, they do not allow NFTs as reward. So they reached out to this company and told them that they had 48 hours to either voluntarily remove the project or relaunch it without NFTs in it, or Kickstarter would take it down. And it has been taken down. I clicked on it today and it says canceled there on the page. So all of those people didn't, on Kickstarter, if it doesn't fulfill or fund to like the fund date, everyone gets their money back. So nobody's lost any money at this point, which is good. But the kind of the lead member of the design of this game issued a quote after Kickstarter gave him this ultimatum of the 48 hours. He said, quote, "We will not remove the campaign. Kickstarter can kick rocks and boot us. A very vocal, angry mob doesn't want wonders to exist, primarily because of AI-assisted art, and secondarily that they believe these are just game pieces and should be reprinted into oblivion. We don't have to guess at this. They have made it quite public. You all have likely seen them. We have seen similar mobs bring many big companies to their knees. This is nothing new." End quote. So yeah, kind of a weird one. It just brings back up that fight over AI. And it's kind of interesting that that guy's, it just sounds like a guy that just wants to milk everybody out of money to me. I don't know him. Maybe he's the most wonderful person in the world, but his stance there of kind of turning the audience that doesn't like the NFTs into the villains was very interesting, because usually it's like the other way around. People are talking about AI and how we don't want that in our video games or our board games. And he kind of turned it around on, well, the board gamers are the worst for not letting us use AI. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. Just a weird kind of circumstance, but I don't know. Even the art in that game, I thought it kind of looked mediocre. So if you're going to have all this artwork on these cool cards and you want to have an $8,000 pledge, which would mean that like everything should be like top of the line, top tier, they should have hired Andrew Bosley or Vincent Dutray, who I talked about earlier, to do like super killer art, because they look pretty good, but they do seem like something that could be made in, I don't know what they're called, Journey or Mid Journey or whatever these AI things are called. So yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on the AI game being booted by Kickstarter, Devin?
That's a difficult thing because we're in a time of technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is that just the direction everything's going? But I also see it from the people who don't want to support it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you take Fallout 4, for example, and you split the game into 2 sections. You've got aesthetics and mechanics. If I copy your mechanics and then have somewhere completely revamp all the aesthetics with no work on my end, I can basically recreate your game, call it something else, and if people like my aesthetics better, I might gain a huge following off of your amazing mechanics that I took from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can copy paste the strategy, the mechanics of a game, and instantly within seconds have beautiful artwork for it in whatever theme or vibe that you want. But it's hard. It's like, do we embrace this and just go, this is going to be the way of the world? This is what it is. We'll get over it. AI creates our images now. Or should things stay very, very authentic? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And that conversation kind of goes back to, is it stealing or is it not? And I think a valid argument could be made probably either way. I generally lean on the side of, it seems like it is a computer stealing from lots of people, but it's hard to pinpoint who they're stealing from, because if we steal from 1,000 people and mix it all up, then you don't know. So yeah, it is a tricky thing. And even in the video game space, there was a quote, I didn't include it in the news, from, I think his name's Andrew Wilson or something like that. He's the CEO of Electronic Arts, and I think he was talking to their investors this week about artificial intelligence and how they're looking for ways to inject it in like as many of their video game development pipelines as possible. And so from like a corporate side, again, a company's biggest expense is their people. If they could make the same products without the people expense, they would love to, because then they would maximize profits, which is the goal of companies in capitalism. And so it scares like me from that side too. We're like, well, yeah, we can remove humans from our artwork so that the company can make as much money as possible. But if we're removing humans from the humanities, like artwork and music, then is it still a human thing? I don't know. Big, questions that here sitting in this room, I don't know the answers to. But I'm glad that game didn't look interesting to me really in the slightest anyway, so I wasn't going to pledge for it regardless of if it was beautiful art or not. Anyway, so something to think about. Ponder that while you're laying in bed, thinking about the other mysteries of the universe. Why are we here? And what is the AI going to do with us? There you go. All right, next board game bit of news is a small one. Chip Theory Games is a pretty well-known and well-liked publisher of, not video games, of board games. They make games where the pieces are primarily big poker chips that have like cool art on them. Their games are really pretty. I think some of their most popular games are Burn Cycle and Too Many Bones. Their games are also expensive, I think, because of the poker chip thing. So I don't have any of their games. I'd love to play some of them. Burn Cycle looks really cool, for example. Anyways, let's see how many tangents I can go on all of these. Number 2, Chip Theory Games has purchased Good Night Games. And Good Night Games is going to be rebranded as Neon Night Games. That doesn't sound very exciting. The exciting thing here, at least to me, is Good Night Games was a little tiny board game publisher. I think it was co-founded by 2 people. And one of the 2 people was Manny Tremblay. And Manny Tremblay is the co-creator and the artist behind Dice Throne. And I really love Dice Throne. I think it's a really solid game. Kind of plays on the foundation of Yahtzee and also adds in lots of modern game things, cards and a player board, and you upgrade powers. And so like gameplay wise, I think it's really solid. And then he also did all the artwork, I think maybe with one other artist. So he has a really striking like visual artistic style, and even across like the Marvel Dice Throne, even though they're Marvel characters, you can tell that he did the art because the artwork looks similar to the other Dice Throne characters. So he has like a really good artistic like level of skill, I guess. Anyway, so he co-founded this tiny little company earlier this year, and they've been bought out by Chip Theory. They're not calling it necessarily a buyout, more of like a partnership that Chip Theory is going to be helping them publish their games. And we're going to talk about their first game later in the episode in Crowdfunding Corner. But I thought that was cool. Manny Tremblay co-designed one of my favorite games, and I hope he made a big bag here by selling to Chip Theory. Who knows, but I thought that was cool. Next one, Leader Games is a very, very famous board game publisher nowadays. Their biggest games are definitely Root, which we talked about earlier. I have 5 boxes of Root on top of my shelf. You can't see them because I purposely hide that clutter up there, but love Root. Some of their other games include Fort and Oath, and their newest game is called Arcs. I really want to play Arcs, I don't think. But again, I don't know when it comes out. I looked on one website and it said October. And then I looked on another website and it said a totally different time. So I think it comes out later this fall, Arcs. Unless you backed it on Kickstarter a couple years ago. I can't back every game I'm interested in Kickstarter. I would have no money. So I didn't back this one. But anyways, another tangent. Leader Games is launching an expansion to Oath, which was their game before Arcs. Oath is probably their most heavy and complicated game. My neighbor has it, and we've been talking about playing it, and I would really like to, but it's like a big game. You have to play for like 3 hours, and then you keep this journal as like a history of this world, and then when you play the next time, you like start from the end position of that journal, and it kind of creates this like history world of this game. One of the things I like most about Leader Games, well, there's probably 2. They really focus on asymmetry, like what I talked about with Root, where like each person playing the game is doing something very different, and how can those things mesh together in like a cohesive way? Because that can be probably very hard to game balance. Like if you're doing something way different than me, how do we make sure that's fair? And then the other thing, they always use the same artist. I think his name's Kyle Farron. I might not be remembering correctly, but and the art in their game again just goes back to this thing that I love, where it's like cutthroat, complex, difficult board game, like the most striking, coolest, cutest artwork paired with it. And his artwork is very like one of a kind. Like if you see a game, you can like tell immediately, oh, that's Kyle Farron's art. So yeah, Leader Games, really cool. I still haven't even got to the news. They're launching an expansion to Oath. It's called Oath New Foundations on Kickstarter on May 28th. So look out for that if you've played Oath and want an expansion. That is when it will be launching on Kickstarter. On their Twitter account, they said it will, quote, bring hundreds of new cards and fascinating new systems to your games of Oath. But I think that's all they've really said, other than releasing maybe like the cover image. But expansion for Oath, I know a lot of people really love that one. All right, next up. Last week we talked about a board game being teased with that cool Gollum artwork of him holding the ring in the cave.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That art, I think, is by Vincent Dutray. Awesome art. Yeah, Vincent Dutray does amazing art. Anyways, maybe it's not and I'm misremembering, but I think it is. That game has been officially revealed. So, let me just read it. Number 4, the Lord of the Rings game that we mentioned last episode has officially been revealed, and you might be very excited at the announcement or a little bummed. The game is called The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, and is basically a reskin of Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is a 2-player version of Seven Wonders that came out probably in 2018. I'm guessing here. Within the last 5 to 7 years or something. The original Seven Wonders came out probably 15 years ago or something. Seven Wonders Duel is pretty commonly regarded as one of the best two-player games of all time. On Board Game Geek, it's number 17 of all time on their top 100 list. So it's a very well-loved game. So, if you like Seven Wonders Duel, love Lord of the Rings, looking for more Seven Wonders Duel, that looks like that will be what this is. I haven't played Seven Wonders Duel, and I would be much more interested in this Lord of the Rings version. So I'm like a little bit excited by that prospect, but a little bit bummed in that they had Antoine Bauza and Bruno Cathala making this game. I really wished it was something new. It reminds me of Seinfeld. There's the episode where he says, we already have a George. And here, we already have a Seven Wonders Duel, you know? So it would have been cool if they used that awesome artwork and made something new. But, you know, this is less risky to tie that cool artwork to a game that they know is a huge success. So that's what that was. They didn't give a official release date because they probably don't even know. Talking about board game release dates, but it does say sometime this autumn. So if you're looking for a new game to play in, quote, sometime this autumn, yeah, you can play that one. I am looking forward to it, even though I was a little bummed that it wasn't something new. All right, next up, there's a small board game publisher. They're based in Utah, which is kind of cool. And I think they are two dentists who started this company. That's why they chose the name that they chose. It's named Bitewing Games. I have one of their games called Trailblazers. It's a really fun one. Really like it. They have partnered with a very famous board game designer a couple of times. I think last year they did is kind of this weird new idea that I don't think I'd seen before, where they have like the big game made by him and then kind of a small side game that you can also buy with it, or just buy the small one and not buy the big one. They kind of released this Kickstarter page that has two games on it, and you can choose. You can get them both for kind of a discount or just choose one. So they did that last year. They're doing another kind of partnership with him. Just a little background, Devin, since I'm sure you're not familiar with Rainer Knizia. He's a German... yeah. You haven't met him? You know? Yeah. He's a German game designer, and he's probably the most well-known, mainly because of just how many games he's designed. I think he's designed over 700 board games, which I don't even know how that's possible. You'd need to be like making a game a day. I mean, not literally, because that would only be a few years, but anyways, I don't know that I could make 700 of anything. I don't think I could make 700 microwave burritos. So
that would take a long time.
So it's kind of impressive. He has a PhD in like mathematics, and because of that, they call him, a lot of people call him like Dr. Rainer Knizia or the Good Doctor. Anyways, so they're partnering with him again to do another one of these double game Kickstarter pages. They're going to be based on what looks like kind of the stories based on the Iliad. The two games are called Icor and Iliad, and they are two-player games that play in 30 to 40 minutes, which is, I think, a nice playtime. Some of Dr. Rainer Knizia's games are short games like that, but then he also makes some big games that are much longer. So I wanted to read this quote. I thought it was interesting. That, I guess, last note there, that Kickstarter for the combined joint page will launch in late June, so look out for that. One of the founders of Bitewing Games released this quote I thought was interesting. Quote, "A few years ago, I heard an interview where Rainer Knizia mentioned that publishers aren't interested in two-player games, so he doesn't often design them. This baffled me," said Bitewing Games' Nick Murray. "It started with me asking Rainer to show me his best two-player designs and even encouraging him to design new games that we would happily support. Since then, we have assessed roughly 20 designs from The Good Doctor, ranging from dead simple, decades-old abstract strategy games to brand new, surprisingly complex experiences." I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool that they had kind of that. Yeah, that moment. It it seems like they have a pretty cool partnership, and I don't know, I'm kind of rooting for the tiny little board game publisher from Utah to be partners with one of the most well-known board game designers of all time out of Germany. I don't know if he lives in Germany, but I believe he is German. Maybe he lives in the States. I'm not sure. I doubt it, since kind of the board game capital of the world is, at least in Euro games, is Germany. So I bet he still lives there. Anyway, so look out for that late June. If you like Reiner Knizia games, 2-player games that play in 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, just a couple more here on board games. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before. We talked about a game called Cloud Age, where those cool cards go in those sleeves with the clouds printed on them. The designer of that game has designed a lot of games that are very well regarded. Great Western Trail, Maracaibo, some other ones that I'm blanking on. He is designing a video game for, or I guess in collaboration with this company called Enhydra Games. And this video game I thought sounded interesting because it's kind of a mix of two, at least in the brief blurb that they released, a mix of two very popular video games. First one, Slay the Spire. That's a deck building roguelike game. And the second one is called Loop Hero, which was also a very popular PC game a couple years ago. So it kind of mixes both of those elements. Even the word loop is in the name. The game is going to be called Demon Loop. Just wanted to give a shout out to that. I thought it looked really cool from the images. Kind of has the same looping idea as Loop Hero. And you're supposedly building up a deck and upgrading cards and trying to do better and better on runs. Kind of like Slay the Spire. It's going to launch in early access. They didn't give a date for that, and they said they thought a full launch would come about a year later. So I thought it was cool, though. Board game designer, a very well-known one, making a cool video game with this video game company. So look out for that Demon Loop whenever it launches. All right, last up in board games, we have Crowdfunding Corner. Man, Crowdfunding Corner is a tough one. There are like hundreds of games on crowdfunding at all times. So I try to focus on the ones where the campaign is ending in like the next couple weeks and that look interesting to me. So I'm sure there's some I'm missing here. If there's some that you're interested in, please write in. Let me know. I would love to check them out. I'm sure that there's no way I'm even seeing all of them, because between GameFound and Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and there's even another one on BackerKit. I mean, there's just, this is kind of the thing I'm feeling a lot lately, is there are so many board games and so many video games, really can't play or even know about all of them. So it's hard to make a podcast to try to be all encompassing about these two topics when you want to cover everything, but it's definitely impossible to cover everything. Anyway, so I've got 5 games listed here. First one is called Fire Siege. It's a co-op game with limited information. So it's a tower defense game as well. So you're trying to protect your tower. That's kind of the crux of tower defense games. And in this game, you have these, I couldn't tell if they were cards or tiles, but one side will be facing you, and the other side will be standing up in this holder facing your teammates. So you can't see what's on the other side of your own cards. That's not a new concept, but seemed like a cool usage here. So you can't tell each other what's on the other side of their cards, but you have to work together to try and like defend this castle from monsters or something like that. Kind of a cool premise. I thought it looked pretty neat. Which kind of the problem with Kickstarter sometimes is shipping can be rough, which I don't blame them. Shipping's expensive, and as people, we are very much spoiled by Amazon. You know, when Prime shipping, we think shipping should be free when shipping is so expensive. So I get it. The shipping looked a little expensive on this game for me to want to back it, but 1 to 4 player game, 60 minutes is what they're saying. It's on Kickstarter until May 14th. So check out Fire Siege. Devin, I know you're clicking through these and opening them up and taking a peek as I'm going along. So if anything looks interesting to you, just butt on in. I've just been chit-chatting.
Will do.
Next one is called One Hit Heroes. It's a co-op boss battler where each player only has 1 hit point, which I again thought was a cool idea. Reminded me of this video game that I really love called Titan Souls, It's kind of this retro top-down looking video game where basically you have to beat like 16 bosses, and you die in one hit, but the boss also dies in one hit. You have this bow and arrow though, and you have to hit the boss in like a very specific spot to kill them, and they can just hit you anywhere and you die. So it's very tough. It has the Souls name in it because I think they wanted to hearken to the difficulty level. Very tough game. Love Titan Souls. If you want another video game that's excellent from this tangent I'm going on right now, check out Titan Souls. But yeah, One Hit Hero is kind of a similar vibe. 1 to 4 players, 45 minutes. And it's on Kickstarter until May 16th. Next one is definitely not a David game. I brought it up because it seems like it's doing pretty well on crowdfunding, and it's the third game in this series, and I think people like this series. So this one is called Euthia Cruel Frost. It's a huge, giant box, dungeon crawling, dice rolling game for 1 to 4 players. This number was intimidating. On Board Game Geek, it says that the game lasts 60 to 480 minutes. So what's that, 1 to 8 hours? Oh, man.
Wow.
I thought that was funny. It's quite a range there. So yeah, that's just definitely not a game for me. Those kind of lifestyle games where like you need to dedicate an entire day today, then leave it on the table and play with the same people next week. I think it's just the period of life I'm in where like I have kids that are just going to destroy that. I don't have like a humongo house that I could leave that in a spare room with a lock and key. So I haven't gotten into big dungeon crawling games like that, but this is the third one in the Euthia series, and they are saying it brings it to some kind of conclusion. So if you've been into that series, that might be one for you as well. All right, next up is the first game from Neon Knight Games. Is that what we called it earlier? From Manny Tremblay, the Dice Throne guy. It's called Neon Rain. So at the same time they announced the acquisition by Chip Theory, they also announced their first game, and that it would be on Kickstarter. So it's on Kickstarter right now until May 14th. And it's a 2-player card game. It seems kind of similar to Dice Throne. Like, not really in that I don't think there's dice. But it's a card game where you're fighting against the other person. And the vibe they're going for is, again, it has Manny Tremblay's cool art. And the vibe they're going for is like arcade cabinets. So I think your characters and the gameplay are supposed to replicate like things like Street Fighter and different arcade kind of fighters like that. So I thought it had cool art, wanted to give it a call out again, just because his art's so cool, and I believe that he can design really solid 2-player games. So check out Neon Rain if you like games like that. And then last one, this is a reprinting. I think this game was on Kickstarter a couple years ago, but there's a game called Ice, and I think it looks really cool. Basically, you have to dig down these layers of ice to, like, I don't know, find treasures and all kinds of stuff underneath. And the board is really cool because they're different layers of cardboard hexes. And as you dig, you like pull them off. And so it kind of comes apart in this piecemeal kind of cool looking thing. And I know one of the members of the Dice Tower, Mike Delisio, really loved this game. So I've been wanting to try it, but some of these games that don't come to retail, they only can be bought on crowdfunding. Man, they can be hard to find and expensive. And then if you try to get them secondhand, the people selling them secondhand know they can't be found, and so they're selling it for double the Kickstarter price too. So if you've been interested in Ice, it is on GameFound until May 27th. It looks cool. This also comes with like a new edition and an expansion. So even if you have the first one, there's an expansion for you if you want that. I would want the Ultimate Edition, I think they called it, and it's like the game plus the new expansion in like this cool one box that holds everything. And I think that's like 130 euros, which is like $150. And then I didn't even look at shipping. So I'm going to have to pass on Ice, but I do hope to try it one day. Looks cool. I like the way the board looks, at least. I don't know much
looking at the
else
board,
about
and
it.
there's like so much depth to the board. It's like you start with one layer, and then you fully build the board a second layer and a third.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you start from that. Yeah. Yep. And then you start from that top, and as you're playing, you dig down. Yeah.
That reminds me of the last one of the last events in Fall Guys is you start on this top platform.
Oh yeah.
And when you stand on them, they start disappearing. You're just trying to be strategic and fall slower than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the game doesn't play like Fall Guys at all, but that's what it reminds me of.
I don't think so. But yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, in Fall Guys, you want to stay up at the top. But I think in Ice, you want to get down to the bottom. But anyways, check out Ice. And then just 3 tiny brief shout outs to these 3 before they end. I brought them up in the past. We got Corpse of Discovery. That's the one from Off the Page Games. They make the graphic novels into board games. Mind Management Behind Me is one of their games. The Sixth Realm is a pretty heavy, but looks really cool game from Final Frontier, I believe. I think it looks really great. Again, just kind of a pricey game. And then Fractured Sky is a reprint, and then the Rift expansion that adds the multicolored, what they called Starfall pieces in the set collection is ending soon too. Did get that one, so well, but it was just a little expansion, so I think they even call it on the Kickstarter page a mini expansion, so it's not bad. All right, that was all the board game news and crowdfunding corner. That was quite a bit. Switching over to video game news, there's even more. This was kind of a busy week, and especially because we recorded early last week, and so we had a couple extra days of things happening and things that would have been on the last episode but just weren't because of timing. So that's my bad for having that work conference, but it wasn't something I could miss, and you know what, you'll get over it. Yeah. This episode will be a little longer maybe, and you'll be fine. All right, video game news for the week. We always start with the free games, and we're going to do that again. PlayStation has announced the PS Plus Essential games for the month of May, and these should all be available right now. The first one that will definitely be the biggest of all of these is EA Sports FC, or Football Club 2024. Basically, this is FIFA 2024. EA and FIFA had like a fight, and so they're no longer partners. So EA doesn't use the FIFA name anymore, but this is the same team, same game as FIFA, just with a different name. So if you want FIFA 24, which is called EA Sports FC 24, it's free on PlayStation Plus Essential. Next one is Ghost Runner 2, which I think we talked about on the Epic Store a few weeks ago, but it's also now free on PlayStation. Next one is my pick of the month. It is called Tunic, and it's a little Zelda-like game where you play as a little fox. Very cool art. I think the coolest part of this game by far, the rest of the game is great too, like the exploration and the combat's fun, but the coolest part of the game is that game manual. Basically, the game, you find pages to this, like the pause menu, and the pause menu looks like a game manual from like a Super Nintendo game. So it's just a pamphlet that like has like a cover page and then like a table of contents, and then would have a page that like teaches you how to play, like push this button to go up and down, push this button to hit. And it's like a 50 or 60 page manual, but you have to find the pages. After you find the page, they go into your digital manual. But then some of the sections will be in like this old language, and they won't translate to English until you have like discovered the logic through the game to get to that point. So you'll like be finding the pages of this manual that helps you to beat the game and helps you find secrets, and then you'll be finding like new bits of it once you get farther, and new sections will translate to English. And then just even more fully embracing that 90s manual, there will be little bits written in handwriting, like, oh, I saw this behind a bush with like an arrow pointing at some picture. And if you like, the manual is just amazing, like all the secrets and depth, and just that idea of my knowledge of the game in the brain is kind of, in my own brain, is kind of visualized in that manual. And it like has secrets from some fake person that played it years ago, written in pen on this manual. Anyways, that's the coolest part of Tunic. It's a super, super game. If you like retro games, like games that are a little bit tough, but and a little obtuse. Sometimes the puzzles can be tricky, but again, dig through the manual and you'll generally find what you need. Tunic is great. Really love Tunic. That was a tangent number 7. Next up on the free games list is Destiny's latest expansion. I believe it was their latest one. I think it's just from last year. Destiny Lightfall. In preparation for the final shape, which comes out next month. So add all those games to your PlayStation library. That way, even once they are wiped and the new games for June are there, they will still be part of your library and you can play them forever as long as you have a PlayStation Plus account. So make sure to add those to the library. Next up, there's quite a few new Game Pass games. I got these from Xbox Wire. The new games are Have a Nice Death, which is a cool roguelike game that kind of has this hand-drawn vibe. It's on cloud, console, and PC, and it's out now. Next one is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I highly recommend that game. I thought it was probably the best Star Wars thing I've seen since Rogue One. I thought it was like a really awesome Star Wars story. Like some crazy character twists and things. I was like, caught me off guard. And for Star Wars and like love stories that like you generally can't have in Star Wars. It's just like really great, in my opinion, Star Wars fiction. That one's available now through EA Play, which I believe is part of Game Pass Ultimate. The next one's called The Rewinder. It's available now. Then Tomb Raider Definitive Edition is out on May 2nd. Well, that's now. From when you're hearing this, that's already now. The next one is called Kona 2 Broom. Don't know anything about that one. May 7th. Then Little Kitty, Big City. About playing as a cat in a big city with kind of cute, colorful art on May 9th, which is yesterday. If you're listening to this on Patreon, it's already out. Go play it. And then last up is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons on May 14th. I'm not sure if Xbox Wire splits their, like, these are the new games for Game Pass by like just the first half of the month, because those were all before May 15th. So there might be a new section or segment at the end of the month, but we'll see. There are also a few games leaving Game Pass on May 15th. Those games are Eastern Exorcist, Ayuden Chronicle Rising, Fuga, Melodies of Steel 2, Ghost Lore, Just Cause 4 Reloaded, Norco, SD Gundam Battle Alliance, and Superland 6 Inches Under. So if you want to play Superland 6 Inches Under, or any of those other ones, play them before May 15th. Or else they won't be on Game Pass anymore. All right, and then last free game on the Epic Store, they always have their free games, is called Circus Electrique. I think that's how you pronounce that one. It's described as a story-driven, tactical RPG and circus management game with a steampunk kind of art twist. Kind of looks like Darkest Dungeon, like the combat, at least. Has a 74 on OpenCritic, which is like good fare. So check that out. At least add it to your library. It's free. And then there's also a currency and skin pack for a game called Firestone, if you play that and want some currency on the Epic Store. All right. Now here for a minute, we're going to go back and forth with stories from Microsoft and Sony. Good ones and bad ones. We're going to start with the bad ones. Hopefully they'll turn into good ones, but all right. Let me clear my throat. This is going to be a big one here. So Microsoft's debacle this last week. Just a little backstory. Microsoft has purchased a lot of gaming entities lately. They purchased Activision Blizzard for almost $69 billion just a couple years ago. That was Microsoft in general. I believe it was Microsoft's biggest acquisition ever. Even though gaming is like a very small portion of Microsoft as a company, as one of the biggest companies in the world. Anyway, so they did that. A couple years before that, they bought ZeniMax Media. ZeniMax is the parent company, and it costs about $7.5 billion. They're the parent company of a lot of things, primarily Bethesda. So they own Bethesda Softworks, the publisher, Bethesda Game Studios, who is the developer behind The Elder Scrolls, the game Devin's obsessed with right now, Fallout, and Starfield. They own Arcane, who has 2 locations, Arcane Austin, who did Dishonored, Prey, and Redfall is their most recent game. And then Arcane Lion, who did Deathloop and is working on a Blade game in collaboration with Marvel. They own id Software, who has been doing Doom games since like the 90s, I think. They also made Quake and Rage, and then the newer Doom games, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. And then Machine Games is doing the new Wolfenstein games, the New Order, the Old Blood, and they're working on an Indiana Jones games, which everyone thinks will be out this year. Then Tango Gameworks, I think, is their one Japanese company. Tango is an interesting one. They were founded by Shinji Mikami, who is a very famous name in video games. He was like a designer or a creative lead on the first Resident Evil game, on Resident Evil 4, which is generally regarded as one of the best Resident Evil games, on Vanquish, and then he founded Tango Gameworks, and they made The Evil Within 1, The Evil Within 2, Ghostwire Tokyo, and then last year's Hi-Fi Rush. Shinji left the company, I think, last year. Maybe the year before, but I think it was last year. But yeah, Japanese developer with a lot of great games. And then they own some other stuff, ZeniMax Online Studios. Anyways, so Microsoft purchased them in 2020. That was your backstory. This week, I think just yesterday even, Microsoft announced that restructuring at Bethesda and that they were going to cut 4 teams. One of the teams is a mobile team. I didn't really even care to put their name in here, which is a little thoughtless of me. They were humans with jobs, and I feel bad when anyone has to leave their job. But another team is going to be absorbed, but the other 2 are the 2 that everyone is upset about. First one is Arcane Austin, team that's been around for quite a while. Like I mentioned, they did Dishonored and Prey. Prey is pretty widely regarded as one of the best like immersive sim games. They did release a stinker in Redfall, though, that I think pretty widely is like terrible. But anyways, Microsoft said that they are being closed down not because that was a bad game, but just generally they needed to cut costs. The other team is Tango Gameworks, the Japanese team I talked about earlier. And so people are pretty upset that Microsoft has bought so many teams and then is closing a couple that have made games that are pretty consequential. Dishonored, Prey, Evil Within, Hi-Fi Rush, which was probably Xbox's best game last year. Most unique for sure. And it also just came to PlayStation in Microsoft's new initiative where they published 4 games on PlayStation in the last few months. So yeah, a little surprising that they were shut down after that seemed to be a big important game for them. Some new news came out today about this in some reporting from Jason Schreier. He's probably the most well-connected journalist in video games. He writes for Bloomberg. He said that Xbox is planning even more cuts than these 2 that happened today in, quote, a widespread cost-cutting initiative that still isn't finished, end quote. And he also said that Tango and Arcane were close to the pitching stage of their next games, which would have been Hi-Fi Rush 2 for Tango. And Arcane was hoping to kind of return to form and return to an immersive sim similar to Prey. Then some more news today from The Verge, that Microsoft is also considering raising the price of Game Pass Ultimate again, and maybe adding Call of Duty games to that service. That was a lot of stuff. People are upset because the studios are closed down, which is a bummer. I hate it when people, lose their job, especially when Microsoft as like a corporation makes, again, so much stinking money. But a corporation's job is to maximize profits for shareholders. It's not just to make some profits. It's to maximize profits. And that can be brutal. And it is obviously brutal. Microsoft and Xbox are in a weird place right now where I think there was a rumor or a report or a leak that came out last week that the Xbox Series of consoles only sold like 800,000 units the entire last quarter, which is abysmal. Whereas like I think Sony was trying to sell like 20 million this year or something. So they are not selling super well their hardware. And it seems like the Xbox division is getting a lot of pressure from Microsoft to let's stop making these boxes and stop having our games be exclusive. Just throw all the games everywhere and we'll make as much money as possible from our games. And just in the last few months, they tested that with 4 games. They did Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, what's the bug game? Grounded, and Sea of Thieves was the last one that just came to PlayStation. They all sold very well on PlayStation. We're going to get into more of that in a minute. Well, we're already here. Let's just talk about it now. This was going to be number 5, but it sounds like Microsoft is proud of the performance of their experiment to publish those 4 games on PlayStation. The CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, said in an earnings call, quote, "Earlier this month, we had 7 games among the top 25 on the PlayStation Store, more than any other publisher." He said that, quote, "Microsoft is committed to meeting players where they are by bringing great games to more people on more devices," end quote. There's some people that thought these 4 games would just be like the end of their experiment, but I mean, with Microsoft CEO kind of doubling down and talking about the PlayStation Store on an earnings call with investors, Sea of Thieves like getting a huge resurgence from tons of sales on the PlayStation Store, and the other games that I mentioned also selling well. Most people think that kind of the floodgates are about to open and they're going to just start releasing everything on PlayStation and Switch. And they're already putting out everything on PC. So, Devin, from all of this Xbox news that I just shared, anything interesting? Are there any games that you would like to come to other platforms? I know personally there's quite a few that I would love to play, just as someone who has been out of that ecosystem for a while and hasn't had a way to play them. What do you think of Xbox's strategy? Just, any thoughts?
I think they're finally realizing that their hardware is not quite as good as Sony's. No, I don't really know. Like you're saying, I'm out of the ecosystem as well.
Yeah.
I don't really remember what was on Xbox super well. I just played Liza P on Game Pass, but that was on.
Yeah. That was on everything.
That was on everything. What about Gears of War? Was that on just Xbox?
That's right. That's one of their exclusives. That's one I would love to come over.
Halo.
Yep. That's the big one, right? If they put Halo on PlayStation, like it's over. Everything's coming.
Yeah. Y'all, what else was just on Xbox? I honestly don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I loved my Xbox when we had that. I had the original Xbox, and that's where I played Splinter Cell, Oddworld, Stranger's Wrath. That's where we played Halo, Fusion Frenzy. Like, I loved that thing. I thought it was awesome. And I don't want like Xbox to go away. It's good for Sony and Nintendo to have another competitor, so that they're all kind of forcing each other to be as good as they can be, at least for the consumer. But yeah, I've been out of that ecosystem for a while too, and they've just kind of made they've lost at the wrong time. They really lost the PlayStation 4 generation, which they have said was a bad time to lose, because that's when everyone started building their digital libraries, which is totally true. When the PlayStation 5 was coming out, like, I thought the Xbox Series X looks cool, but man, I have 800 digital games on the PlayStation Store. Like, there's not a chance I'm gonna buy an Xbox. And so yeah, I think that was really bad for them, and they've really struggled to get great games out. I feel like they have like twice as many studios as Sony does, and I think pretty universally, like, people would say that Sony makes better games than Microsoft does. There's probably a few exceptions. Like, I know some people really love Halo Infinite, but I think it had like a really rough patch as well, where it wasn't getting updates fast enough and it kind of lost its player base. I know people really liked like Gears 4 and 5 as well. but they have like some teams working on like a Perfect Dark reboot that have just never materialized, and like Redfall, which we mentioned earlier, like did so terribly, and a lot of their games have just been, this is like a pregnancy term, but gesticulation, is that a word? I
have no
they've
idea.
been in the oven. They've just been cooking, and for such a long time that it doesn't seem like they're like ever going to get them out. So I don't know. I feel like they're in between a rock and a hard place here. So it does seem like to me like they're gonna start dumping other games over, which as a PlayStation first gamer, like I'm very excited about that. To play the Halo Master Chief Collection and get trophies on it, like that's like the best thing ever for me.
Yeah, that'd be super fun, honestly, to relive some of those moments.
Mm-hmm. And so I really hope it happens, even though like the only thing that it is a bummer for is people that are invested in that ecosystem that like bought Xboxes. Like, what's going to happen to their, like, I don't know, all of their games that they bought the Xbox for that were supposed to only be on their box are now going everywhere. Which, I don't know, maybe that's a first world problem, but I definitely think that probably feels bad.
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
I do.
Like if Sony tomorrow was like, yeah, we're going to put The Last of Us on the Switch, and Nintendo was like, well, we're not going to put Mario everywhere yet, but here's Donkey Kong and Splatoon. It would be really weird, right? So I don't know. Just a weird kind of moment in time they're in right now where Microsoft owns so many things, but it seems like they're getting a lot more pressure from the Microsoft portion. And so the Xbox portion is having to make these crazy decisions. Game Pass doesn't have as many subscribers as they wanted it to or need it to. So they're worried about raising the prices there. They're not selling like their consoles. So I don't know. It's a weird scenario. It's really interesting to like see how quickly everything is happening. They might even have another couple games on PlayStation before the end of the year, which would be nuts. So I don't know. It's kind of an exciting time just because of all the change. But yeah, do feel bad for the people that were let go. Really bummed that Tango GameWorks was shut down. I haven't tried Hi-Fi Rush yet, but I love like rhythm games, and that one has a cool, colorful vibe with it. And I think it is kind of like a rhythm-based, like Crypt of the Necro Dancer or a Guitar Hero game with kind of like a fighting aspect to it as well. So yeah, they've got a lot going on over there on the Microsoft and Xbox side that will be very interesting to see how it shakes out. But it sounds like they're going to have a lot more cuts, at least on the Bethesda teams, and I imagine there will be quite a bit of more shakeups. But anyways, that was a bit of backstory about Microsoft, some of their acquisitions, and that's kind of one of the hot button topics of the moment is them shutting down those teams. All right, let's switch gears and let's beat the crap out of Sony for a minute. This is the Helldivers debacle. Let's take a look at this timeline here. I typed it all out. Helldivers 2 released on PC and on PlayStation 5 on February 8th. That's already like 3 months. That's crazy. Because of some bugs and difficulties they were having on launch, they temporarily removed a feature that they were planning on launching with. That feature was, if you buy the game on Steam, you have to connect your Steam account to a PlayStation Network account in order to play Helldivers, right? That's not a very uncommon thing. Like if I play, even on my PlayStation, if I play a Ubisoft game or a Warner Brothers game, they generally make me sign in to like a Warner Brothers account or a Ubisoft account. And even on Steam, like if I play an Xbox game, I'll have to sign into my Xbox account to play that game. So it's not like not a weird new feature. But because of some stumbles they had with like so many people are trying to play this game, we've got some weird bugs, they turned that feature off temporarily, even though it was listed in like on the game page and in all of their patch notes. Next step, Helldivers was a huge success. Hooray. Then last week, they released an update and kind of a blog post on Steam that said, quote, due to technical issues at the launch of Helldivers 2, we allowed the linking requirements for Steam accounts to PlayStation Network accounts to be temporarily optional. That grace period will now expire, end quote. So any new accounts that were going to be made after May, I think 6th, would need to link their Steam account to a PSN account. And any existing players would have to do that by like a month later. I think it was like June 4th. So they put that out, and immediately there was like a humongous backlash by the PC community. They're like, we don't want to do this. We don't want to link, which I don't understand on one side, because there are so many other entities that make you link accounts. Like we already mentioned, quite a few. Epic Store, Ubisoft, Warner Brothers. There's a ton. I do understand it from the other side of like, okay, we didn't have to when we bought the game. And even though I didn't know this was a feature that was planned, it wasn't there. And so I don't like that it's there now. I get that side of it too. And PC gamers, I mean, every kind of group of gamers can be very stubborn, but I feel like PC gamers are very protective of kind of their ecosystem because it has been the most free. Like there's no online fee, like charge. Well, that's not like subscription to play Steam games online, because PC gamers would like throw a huge fit, right? And so because of the power of the consumer on Steam and those kinds of things, they've kind of kept their platform kind of the most feature rich. Anyways, so I understand both sides in that scenario. Here's the rest of the timeline. After they announced that, within a day, the game had been review bombed by 62,000 people. And over the next few days, that number climbed up to 300,000 people. You should click on that link, Devin. There's a really funny image. Someone made a chart of the reviews, and you can see like if it's a positive review, it's a green like tick mark up. And if it's negative review, it's a tick mark down. And it's like pretty steady, like mostly green, because I think the game had an overwhelmingly positive review score on Steam. And then that day it's just boom, tank, like so many red ones. It's a funny picture. And reviews are a big deal. I mean, on Steam, like if I look at a Steam page and it says overwhelmingly positive, like I am so much more likely to check that game out.
Same.
And so the game dropped from overwhelmingly positive to mixed. And Steam shows like the lifetime review score and also the recent review scores. And in recent, it said like overwhelmingly negative. So it got bombed like crazy. Like the next day, let's see, what did I write here? Yeah, even a lot of people were going back and accidentally review bombing Helldivers 1, which came out like 10 years ago. So that one got like a ton of negative reviews too. Later that day, the company that makes makes Helldivers, the company's name is Arrowhead, their CEO tweeted, quote, "Sorry everyone for how this all transpired. I hope we will make it up and regain the trust by providing a continued great game experience. I just want to make great games," end quote. Obviously not his idea. Sony wanted everyone to sign in to PlayStation Network, and this is a Sony game that they had Arrowhead make, so not his decision, obviously. Okay, so it gets a little crazier. The next day, on Saturday, May 4th, Sony seemed to double down on this point of view, even though they've gotten like 300,000 negative reviews at this point. They decided to allow Steam to refund a bunch of players that threw a big fit. And Sony removed the game from sale from over 100 storefronts. Most of them small, like countries that don't have PlayStation Network or like kind of obscure countries. But they removed it from like so many different countries. So you couldn't even buy the game or see the store page in those countries. And so kind of it was just like escalation. People are getting madder and madder. And Sony matched it. Well, okay, fine. We'll just take away your option to buy the game. So everyone's super mad, which kind of a funny situation. Next step, just when it seemed like everything was about to blow up, Sony decided to change their minds. They tweeted on Sunday night, quote, "Helldivers fans, we've heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update. The May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players and for current players beginning on May 30th, will not be moving forward. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Thanks again for your continued support of Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on future plans. End quote. And then it seems like over the next day or two, I think Sony did reinstate the game to be sold in all those markets. So they totally changed their mind after initially like doubling down and really ticking everyone off. The story's not over though. So the next couple bullets here. The Helldivers community saw this as a huge win, obviously. The internet rallied together and they defeated giant corporation Sony. So they saw it as a huge win and they decided to launch, I think they have a name for it, like Operation Review, I can't remember what they called it, Operation Fix something, I don't know. They named it with some operation. Basically, they're asking everyone to go back in and give it positive reviews now. So the game's had over 200,000 positive reviews since Sony changed their mind, which has pushed it back up from mixed to mostly positive. It's not quite back to where it was, but it looks a lot better on Steam. So it's kind of these 3 days of like crazy up and downs where things are just going nuts. And I'm sure Sony just decided we don't want all this bad PR. Like, we don't want the PC community to be mad at us because we've got a lot more games coming to PC. Their Ghost of Tsushima, I think, comes to PC next month. And so I'm sure that they were just like, the PC players are way more upset than we thought they were going to be. And I do think that this would have just gone different if that requirement to link your account had been there on launch day. Then I don't think it would have been a big deal. But it's funny how just because of that tiny little change, everything went like so different. Does that bug you when you have to like link an account or sign in somewhere else?
I would say it's inconvenient, but I'm usually over it in 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
I'm usually
like,
it takes my password.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, their password's wrong. Like, no, it's not. I use one password. And then it's like, reset your password. So I type the one I want in. You can't use the same password that already exists. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, that is the worst. But I've generally had the same experience where, okay, it took me 90 seconds and now I'm in and I don't have to do that again. And it's fine. But kind of a funny story. So both Sony and Microsoft having some weird PR issues lately, and hopefully they can both end positively with Microsoft figuring out how to manage their teams. And I don't know what success will look like for them. Maybe it's launching all their games on Switch 2 and PlayStation, or maybe it's kind of righting the ship and making the Xbox Series Y really awesome. We'll see. And then Sony, again, this is why we need Xbox to be in the ecosystem. Because if there was no Xbox, Sony would get away with more things like this that people, I guess, don't want them to get away with. You know, $10 upgrade fees, and you have to link your account to a PlayStation Network account. And since we don't have a competitor, we can do whatever we want. You know, monopolies are bad for the consumer. So don't want Xbox to go away, for sure. So I thought both of those stories were a little funny, though, and those are definitely the two big stories of the video game industry right now. All right, now that we're out of those kind of crazy stories, we got a brief little break from Microsoft and Sony land with a little update from Nintendo land. Nintendo announced that the Switch has sold 141.32 million units, which makes it the number 3 console of all time, needing to pass only the DS, which is at 154, and the PlayStation 2, which sold 155 million, to be number 1. It'll surely pass those, I think, just with the trajectory that they're going at. So, very cool. The Switch is awesome. I really wish that it was as powerful as like my Rogue Ally, though, because it makes playing games on the Switch difficult now. But it's so stinking old. I think I've got a quote here in just a second, and I think they say it's 9 years since they announced the first Switch. So it's just a stinking old machine. So the Switch 2 will be awesome. Speaking of which, that's what the next bullet point's about. Nintendo's holding a Nintendo Direct in June, where they're going to talk about the software lineup for the Switch for the rest of the year. I think earlier in the year they decided to push the Switch 2 to next year. And so because of that, this year's been very quiet for Nintendo. I think they only have a couple games releasing. I think a remake of Luigi's Mansion 2 They had the Princess Peach game earlier in the year. They do have like a Paper Mario remake, I think later this month even, but not a lot announced. So that'll be cool to see what else they've got. Hopefully Metroid Prime 4 is, somewhere. It's probably going to be on the Switch too. That game was announced like 9 years ago. Anyways, so they tweeted out about this Nintendo Direct, and obviously everybody thought, oh, Switch 2 is coming out next year. They're probably going to talk about it at this thing. So after they tweeted about the Nintendo Direct, they replied to that tweet with another tweet that reads, quote, "This is Furukawa, I hope I pronounced that right, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year." I think their fiscal year ends like next March. Fiscal years don't line up with a calendar year. "It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation." So, seems like we're probably going to have to wait till early next year, or maybe even really late this year to hear about Switch 2. I think there was a bit more that this Nintendo president said, that they're viewing the Switch 2 as more of an iteration on the Switch as opposed to like a full-blown like new thing. So it's probably just going to be pretty similar. I imagine it'll be backwards compatible, have a similar idea that like maybe it's a 1080 screen this time and it's a little bit bigger, and obviously it's got to be quite a bit more powerful. And I think that would be cool. That'd be super cool. If that screen was 1080, I'd love playing on that more. 720 screen is a little stinky. But yeah, excited about the Switch 2. My kids and I play so many games on the Switch. I really think that we're going to talk about that at the end of the episode, but so many games that are good for families on those devices. So excited about that. And Nintendo's just still selling a ton of them. I'm glad that there was a time, speaking about like Xbox struggling and thinking about getting rid of making devices and maybe just selling games. When the Wii U came out, they had just had the Wii, which was also uber successful. The Wii sold like freaking crazy. The Wii U like did nothing. I think I am one of the 7 people in the world that bought one. And so a lot of people thought at that point that Nintendo was going to stop making hardware and just start putting their games everywhere. And if the Switch had failed, I bet they would have. But they turned it around. The Switch is so cool. Everyone loves it. And so we will now never have Mario Wonder on my PlayStation. So I'll now never get trophies on Mario Wonder, which, is a bummer. So all of you out there that bought the Switch, it's your fault, I guess. Stop buying Switches.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. I really like the Switch, but it'd be nice if they had achievements. For some reason, I love achievements.
So do I.
And then Nintendo should freaking add those. Anyways. All right, that was Nintendo Land. Couple more small things here, and then we'll be out of the news. Number 6. Sony is seemingly planning a showcase for later this month. It is May, and usually in the summertime, that's when E3 used to be, where they would do like all the announcements in the same day. And nowadays it's, generally the summer game showcase with Jeff Keighley, and then Xbox has their show, and Sony might have one maybe. Anyways, it does seem like Sony is planning a showcase for later this month. The always leaky Mr. Jeff Grubb, who we talk about on every episode basically, says that his sources have told him it will be this month. Quote, "Whether it's next week or the week after, I honestly don't know. It could be the end of the month, but I won't be surprised if this does actually happen next week. It could happen at any moment." So it seems like there's going to be one imminently, which will be fun for the show. We're going to talk about a lot of cool things.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, hopefully some cool things. I imagine that they'll talk about the PS5 Pro. I'd be very surprised if they didn't, but I think they will. Couple questions about the PS5 Pro, Devin. What do you think it will cost? And do you think in conjunction with that, the base model, just the base PS5, will get a price cut?
What does the base model cost right now? $400?
It used to. Now the digital version So they had the originals. Now they have the slightly revised ones. Have you seen those that have the slit in them? It's basically the same amount powerful. They just changed like the microchip inside and a few other components to make it cheaper for them to make. And so they have this slim model that doesn't have a disk drive, and it's $450 now instead of $400. And then you can buy the disk drive separately if you want and plug it in. And then they do have one with the disk drive, I believe. Or maybe it just comes bundled with that attachment or something for $500.
Okay, so it still costs
$500 and $450.
I'm gonna guess the new one costs $100 more, so $550, and they lower the original to $400.
Okay, I like that guess. I also think they'll lower it to $400. There's been a lot of talk about the Pro, and that it might, be more expensive and powerful than we think. So some people are even saying they think it might be $600, and with wild. Inflation and stuff, that makes sense, but that seems like a crazy number for them to just say, like, hey, the new PlayStation is $600. The last time they said that was when they released the PlayStation 3, and it kind of blew up in their face. Obviously, nowadays with inflation, what it is, $600 isn't the same as $600 was in 2007 or whenever that was, but it does still, that number still just seems high. So I think I agree. I was thinking 400 and 500, but 550, I'd be on board with that. I think that's probably more realistic. Cool. What do you think we would see at a PlayStation showcase? I've written down some of their teams here in the document, and it seems like some of them definitely we won't see for a while. I don't think we'll see anything from Naughty Dog. I think they announced they're working on their new game, which everyone assumes is The Last of Us Part 3. And then they just released like The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, I think on PC and PS5, maybe like in December or January. So I don't think that they're anywhere near ready. Insomniac seems to release a game every 10 minutes. So I'm guessing that they will probably be there with Wolverine. They've been at like everything and had Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank, and Spider-Man 2 all in this generation, which is pretty impressive. Guerrilla Games, who makes Horizon, I don't think they're ready for like their next big Horizon game, but their team has gotten so big. I think they're probably working on a secondary game, and they might show that, whatever that is. I think it will be a first-person shooter. That's kind of what their history had been. They used to make Killzone before they made Horizon. Seems to me like Sucker Punch would be at the show to talk about Ghost of Tsushima 2, Ghost of something else other than Tsushima. It's been 4 years since that game came out. Polyphony, who makes Gran Turismo. I don't think Gran Turismo 8 is anywhere near. They'll probably want to ride 7 for quite a while longer. Sony Bend, last made Days Gone. That was, I think, in 2019, so that's like 5 years. They might be ready to show something. The 2 games that they did announce last year, Concord and Fair Games, will probably be shown again. They're like their games as a service initiative, so they'll probably be multiplayer shooters with skin packs and free to play and kind of idea, it seems like. And then I was thinking Returnal 2. That would be really cool. The game came out 3 years ago this last week.
It might motivate me to play Returnal 1.
Oh man, we need to play that.
Yeah,
I was thinking we should play it. We should play it for the YouTube channel, and then that could be like 5 or 6 videos, maybe even a video for each of the different biomes.
It'd be nice because you know the game so well, you can just teach me everything.
Yeah, with the co-op mode. And then they have that new DLC pack that I haven't played. It's called the Tower of Sisyphus or something. And I think it has like a boss rush mode, and you have to climb this tower in kind of like a rope. Yeah, I don't know. So we could play that too. That'd be fun. Anyway, so they might have... It's been a while since they have like announced, here are some big single player games. And I feel like they need to have some soon. Because there's been a lot of great games on the PlayStation 5, but a lot of them haven't been made by Sony. And I'd love to play another Uncharted, even though I know Naughty Dog's not going to make it. Or I would love... Yeah, I just need them to release a game a year. And it doesn't seem like they're even doing that, other than Insomniac, who... I don't know how they make all their games, but Anyways, kind of continuing on the presentation train, Xbox did officially announce their showcase for the summer. It will be on June 9th. Jez Corden, who is another games press person that's very well connected, said that Microsoft is, quote, very confident in their lineup, end quote. Just from reading some forums, it looks like there are rumors of a Starfield expansion, which Starfield was Bethesda's last game. Kind of takes the Fallout vibe and the Fallout kind of system into outer space. So it's a sci-fi game instead of a post-apocalyptic 1960s vibe. So there's that. There's a game called Avowed that I think the team that made Fallout New Vegas is making, I believe. I think they were even making like a new... Yeah, they've got some cool games. So hopefully they'll show some cool stuff. The Indiana Jones game everyone does think is going to come out this year. They've got that game in partner with Marvel for Blade. That will hopefully be cool. They'll definitely show Call of Duty since they now own Activision. So should be some cool stuff there as well. So June might be like a super stacked month. When did Nintendo say theirs was going to be? On June... Oh man, I just lost it. Where did I put that? Brief break in Nintendo Land. Oh yeah. Oh, they haven't, just a date in June. They haven't given the exact date. So we got Nintendo and Xbox both with showcases in June. And Sony maybe this month, towards the end of May. Maybe that'll bleed into June and we'll just have a little nostalgic E3 like month of June. But that will be cool. All right, last one here. We have the expansion for Elden Ring coming up soon, next month. I know Devin's very excited about that. I'm a little intimidated by it.
I agree, actually. I was thinking, I was like, do I need to just go and rebeat the entire Elden Ring game so I remember any of this?
I feel like I do. I only got probably... I bet I'm 2/3 of the way through, but I played for like 80 or 90 hours. So... that just tells you how bad I suck at, difficult games. But at the same time, thinking about replaying all of that is intimidating. And you kind of have to get back into the Souls vibe. Like, okay, do I remember how Elden Ring plays? And it plays differently than Sekiro and then all the others. And yeah, I don't know. I am excited about it, though. It seems like it's going to be the big thing of this summer. And I'm sure it's going to be crazy. You need to stream that on day one. That's like a must do.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyways, that is coming out on June 21st. From Software's kind of creator, co-founder, the creative guy behind all of these Souls games. His name is Hidetaka Miyazaki. They usually just call him Miyazaki by his last name, which always gets me confused with the Studio Ghibli guy, whose last name is also Miyazaki, who is also very well known and loved for all of those wonderful Studio Ghibli movies. Princess Mononoke, probably my favorite, but Howl's Moving Castle, also a good one. I need to watch some of the others I haven't seen. Anyway, no, that was another tangent. This Miyazaki from Software says that this will be Elden Ring's first and only expansion. Quote from him: Shadow of the Erdtree is the first and last DLC, and we have no plans to add more content to Elden Ring. Elden Ring emphasizes exploration and adventure in a big world. In order to provide such an experience, a vast and huge setting is inevitably needed. Therefore, instead of splitting it into several parts, it was better to simply make one big expansion. If they were sold separately, the freedom of exploration and sense of adventure would be reduced. End quote. And I think he's talking about like Dark Souls 3, for example, I think got 2 or 3 different smaller DLC packs. So I don't know. It seems like, just based on a few things I've heard, I think there are more details out there, but I'm trying to avoid basically anything about it. It seems like there's going to be a very large expansion to the game. I don't know like how big, or if it's a new map area, or how many bosses there are, but I imagine it will be big. Are you excited?
Yeah.
About this game?
And if it's the first and the last DLC, I'm actually down. Yeah. That's fine with me.
I agree. Yeah, knowing that it's the last one is kind of encouraging to me too. Like, okay, I can have my last hurrah with this game.
Yeah, and for us that
loves.
like accomplishments and trophies, it's like, okay, we were this close to the platinum originally. Here's the one DLC's trophies. It's not too much.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. All right, this next thing I thought was kind of funny. Maybe, Devin, you're going to win this. There's also an Elden Ring competition going on. And if you win the competition, you win a 10-foot tall statue of one of the bosses from this new expansion, the Shadows of the Erd Tree.
Really?
To enter the contest, you have to upload a mod-free clip of no more than 5 minutes to Twitter, YouTube, or Vimeo, and I think you have to submit it on their website. The statue will go to the winner of best. So they're breaking up into different categories, and I think you can submit different clips to the different categories. The Mesmer statue, the 10-foot statue of this new boss, will go to the winner of best trailer. Then they have a bunch of life-sized Millennia. What's her name? Melania?
Yes.
Millennia. Her metal arm, which I think you can buy for $500. So they're giving away multiple of those for best narrative, best action, and best direction. And then they're giving away some helmets from that Mesmer boss. So not the whole statue, just his helmet. Will go to best comedy, best use of sound, best armor design, and most original use of Elden Ring. And you can submit entries until June 2nd. I think that is a very cool way to promote the Elden Ring expansion coming up. That obviously cost them a fortune to have that 10-foot tall statue created and shipping that wherever. I think it actually said you have to be in United States, maybe. Check the fine print on that. I don't remember.
You imagine owning that thing?
It'd be cool.
Yeah,
I would. If it's the only statue of its kind, man, I bet that thing, you could probably auction that for a pretty penny.
Oh, I'm sure.
But yeah, a pretty cool competition. So if you have any cool Elden Ring clips or want to replay the game and try to get some cool clips that you could win one of those 7 or 8 categories in, do that before June 2nd. All right, that is all the video game news. That was a lot of news in both fronts. Lots of cool board game stuff. Lots of cool video game stuff. Man, I love games. It's fun to talk about. And
you know a lot more than I do.
Useless details about who owns what and who made what. Yeah, I like that kind of behind, what do they call it? Inside baseball stuff. So all the behind the scenes is interesting to me too. All right. Well, since that's all the news, we're going to wrap up the show today, which is going to be our longest show. Crazy.
Oh, yes.
So we'll make this closing segment kind of short, but we have a listener inquiry that I thought was a good one. So we're going to end by talking about this inquiry. You too can also write into the show by writing us at, well, first you have to join the Patreon. Join us at patreon.com/supergamebrothers, and then you can submit your comments or questions or inquiries to the show, just like Alex A. did here. And this is what he said, quote, Alex A. I have a soon-to-be 5-year-old son. What board games would you recommend for he and I to get? We already have some classics like Uno, Jenga, Connect 4, Hungry Hungry Hippos, etc. And I'm going to extend that to board games and video games. I've been thinking about a few, and it's hard for me not to think of the games that I played when I was that age, because those are kind of the first ones that come to mind. Or Devin, are there any that come to mind for you immediately?
Don't Wake Daddy.
Oh, yeah.
Mousetrap.
Yeah, that was a good
Operation.
Those are, yeah. Ants in the Pants. We had that one too.
Oh,
little,
yeah.
Ants that you had to flick. Don't Wake Daddy. That was such a stressful one.
Yeah.
Just, I think you had to hit the dad's alarm clock based on what space you landed on and hope he didn't wake up and send you back to bed or something. Yeah, those are good ones.
Big Loader. Yeah. And then the peanut game. Peanut guy that grabs the peanuts, switches arms. You know what I'm talking about?
And puts them in the back of his truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want him to pick you up, right? Because he takes you back.
You want him to go over your peanut with his arm.
Yeah, all of those were really fun. We have Mousetrap, and I played that with my two older boys who are 7 and 5 probably a month ago, and it was surprisingly more fun than I remembered. I didn't even remember what the goal of the game was, because basically we would just build the weird contraption and then watch it go off. What do they call those? A Rube Goldberg machine, I think, are those contraptions where like one piece knocks another piece, then knocks another piece, then knocks. I think that's what those are called. Yeah, I don't know. It's not a great game. You just have to get, I think the first person to get 6 pieces of cheese wins. And if you get trapped, like you lose some or something, but kind of fun. All right, I do have a few board game recommendations, Alex A. I've got them here next to me, so I'm going to pull them up on the screen. These are 5 that I have found success with my kids, but audience, I'd love to hear from you too. If there's any that you have played with, about a 5-year-old that has gone over well, I'd love to hear that too, because I'm always looking for new ones that I won't hate, because a lot of kid board games are like only fun for kids, not fun for adults. That's kind of the hard balance. Really quick before I talk about my few board games here, do you remember Loopin' Louie?
Loopin' Louie?
Yeah.
I do not.
Oh, man. So Loopin' Louie was this little farmer. And for some reason, this farmer's rich, I guess. He has an airplane. And there are 4, kind of like in a cross, 4 different chicken coops that each person sits in front of with chickens that are these little circle discs. And you have this little launch pad that you would tap. And Loopin' Louie would go around in a circle and try to knock your chicken tokens down. And you have to smack your little pad to bump him up in the air so that he goes over your chickens and doesn't steal them. We've also played that with our kids. A pretty fun one. They had a few different versions. One of them was Loopin' Chewie with Chewbacca in it. And now they have one based on Bluey, which is the
Loopin' Bluey.
It's actually called Keepy Uppy Game, because they have a whole episode in that show about Keepy Uppy Game, which is keeping a balloon off the ground, which was a very fun game as a child. But Bluey is also a great show. Just as another tangent, I am just full dad here. We're messing with the thermostat, and you're gonna get beat up by dad mode. And don't interrupt me when Bluey's on, because Bandit, who is the dad in Bluey, and he's a pretty funny guy. Got some good one-liners. Got some life lessons he's going to teach Bingo and Bluey. Man, yeah, Bluey's a good one.
Being a parent changes your life, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Anyways, the 5 games, Alex, that I would recommend. I think dexterity games go over really well with kids, because learning like a complex rule set and like reading cards and things like that, tricky. I've had a little bit of success with a couple games like that with my oldest, who is 7, but dexterity games work really well. I'm not going to pull this one down, but Clask is a really good one. It's really short, lasts like 3 to 5 minutes, and it's kind of like air hockey with magnets. It's an amazing game. I really love Clask. That one's great with kids because they get it quickly enough. Like, oh, okay, I just have to move this thing and bonk this yellow ball. That's okay. A few more dexterity games. This one I just got recently. It's called Go Cuckoo. Where's the picture? There it is.
Cool looking.
Yeah, it comes in this cool metal tin, and inside the tin are these colored pieces of wood, and you set them up inside the tin. So the tin is used in the game, and you kind of make a nest with them by like spreading them all out, basically. And then you have to pull them out. And if you pull like a certain one, I can't remember which, then you get to put an egg piece inside the nest. And as long as it doesn't fall down to the center, you're okay. But if it does, then I think you have to take the egg back. So the first person to get rid of all their eggs wins. And that one's been a big hit. Again, very simple. The kids just pull the little sticks out of the box. And then if they pull a stick out that has like a matching color on the other end, then they get to try and put one of their eggs in. Fun one. And I think you can get it for 15, 20 bucks. Good one. Couple more dexterity ones real quick.
What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be?
Yeah, box is a little bigger, so it took a second. This one I think is only okay, but they've really liked it. This is Space Invaders, the board game.
Ooh.
It has another name, or it used to. It used to be called Flip Ships, and they have since rebranded into Space Invaders. I found this at Target for like $8, so you might be able to find it like on clearance as well. And it's basically just like Space Invaders. You have this little doohickey down here, and you shoot little like bullets from your spaceship down here, and have to land them on the little alien cards to remove them from the game so that they don't do too much damage to the world. So it's just like playing like a arcade version of Galaga or Space Invaders, you know. And then you also have to hit the mother base up here at the top and flip them all the way in there to do like some amount of damage to the mothership. Really fun just to flip the tiles. You basically slam on this little hammer piece right here and it launches the token up. That's a fun one. Another dexterity game. Probably my favorite like tabletop like dexterity game to replace something like Jenga is this one called Men at Work. And Men at Work is great. I'm really bad at it because I have shaky hands. But basically, you put out these big wooden pieces, and then on every turn, you flip over a card, and the card will tell you what you need to add to the work site. You might need to add a worker, who are these funny little meeples with hats on. Your worker might also have to be carrying a beam or a brick, or you might need to add a new one of these support beams, and that support beam might need to go on one of the workers' arms. It gets very intricate. This one, if you're playing with young kids, just be prepared for them to knock it over frequently, because even as an adult, I knock it over often. So there is that, but this one works really well with kids and adults, because I probably have more fun playing this one with adults. I think it's just a great game all around. But that's also a fun one. My kids have really enjoyed it, even though it's, you know, we do 7 turns and then someone's knocking the whole thing over. But they laugh and it's good. So those are a few dexterity games. I do have 2 others that are not dexterity focused that my kids have liked. First one is called Deep Dive. It's a little game where you play as a family of penguins. And it's kind of you're trying to collect different sets of fish. And it's a push your luck game. So you'll set out kind of these water tokens from lightest color down to darkest to like symbolize how deep the penguin is diving. And you'll put a penguin on one of these tokens and flip it over, and you can either keep it or go down deeper. And you keep doing that until you either keep the tile or you land on a predator that would scare the penguin off, and then your turn's over. So it's very simple to teach. They just need to try and get these specific fish tokens, and they need to avoid the sharks and the killer whales. But it has just enough going on, and I like push your luck games where like, ooh, I think I can go one more layer deep and not hit another shark. That feeling is good when you're able to pull it off. So my kids have really liked that one as well. Deep Dive. It's from a really great company, Flat Out Games. They make really great games.
Is Minesweeper a push your luck game?
Minesweeper would be, I mean, a little bit, but it's more like just a puzzle, because you usually can win, like in Minesweeper.
Oh, it gives you enough information to win most times?
I think it does. There might be some times where you have to guess, like, okay, I know that there isn't a mine around this square in either this spot or this spot, and so you might have to make like a lucky guess occasionally. I don't know, like, the design theory behind Minesweeper. Maybe you do have to guess at some point. I've only won a few times in Minesweeper, and I was like, I'm gonna play a different game. But last one, Alex, another push your luck game. This one is called My Gold Mine. Devin's played this one with me. It's at least I believe you did. It's a fun time. Very simple, small game. The only hard part about this one is it's hard to find. I had to import a copy from Europe. I don't think they even sell it in America. It wasn't very expensive. It's like a $15 game, but shipping from Europe was like another 10 or 12. So it ended up being like $25, but really fun game. Basically, you play as a dwarf, And as you can see on the box cover here, there's a dragon in this cave. On every round, you go in the cave to try and get as much gold as you can. And there's this deck of cards. Anytime you take a card from the top of the deck, the card underneath it might be a dragon card. And if it is, the dragon moves from the end of the cave one card closer to the front of the cave. So you only have a limited amount of time to stay in the cave collecting gold before you need to leave. So you can decide to leave the cave earlier to be safer, but you'll get less gold. Or try to stay in longer and hope that you don't get knocked out by the dragon, because if you do, then you lose all your gold that round. And you play 3 rounds and then it's over. Fun game, probably takes 20 minutes. My kids really like it, watching the dragon kind of move across these big tiles. The cave is these big kind of really thick cards that are these cave cards that have a kind of a minecart track on them. And as the dragon moves, you flip them over to their scorched side, and the dragon keeps moving to show like the mine being all burned up. So it looks cool on the table too. So anyways, those were my 5. I think those are really great games. My Gold Mine and Deep Down, those are 2 kind of set collection and push your luck games. And then dexterity games that are simpler generally work well for kids. I've even played Crokinole with my kids. That's a very expensive game that you can play at like a high skill level if you want to, but they really enjoy just flicking the discs. And then the 4 that I mentioned for dexterity games were Clask, Go Cuckoo, Space Invaders, and Men at Work. So yeah, I hope those were good ones. I do have a few video game suggestions too, since I play video games with my kids pretty often. Generally, the 2 kinds of games they like are 2D side-scrollers, which is probably because of my influence, because those are the kinds of games I grew up on. Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario World, Mega Man X, basically Super Nintendo encapsulated. Those are some of my favorite games. And so I play a lot of those, even things like Hollow Knight, like they've just watched me play, and then they, wow, can we have a save? And they want to start playing things like that. So 2D games they really like, and they can get easier because there's only the one playing. They don't have to deal with the right joystick yet, so that helps a lot. The ones that we've played the most together are, again, most of these on the Switch. So hopefully, Alex A, you have a Switch. Super Mario Wonder is the newest 2D Mario game. It's very good. Probably the most beautiful Mario game ever. The artwork is just so cool. And it's a really great game as well. There's a 2D ukulele game. It's called Ukulele and the Impossible Lair. Also a very good one. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Also a great one. So good. Not enough people have played Tropical Freeze. And it's one of the best Donkey Kong Country games. They even brought back the music composer from the original trilogy. His name's David Wise. And so, like, a lot of the songs you remember from Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2, like, he's got riffs on those in this new game. And so it's like, new, pretty game that's really great with nostalgic music. And so, man, it rocks. Yeah, so Nintendo's kind of got those on lock. The other kind of game that my kids like are games where they can use their creativity and generally just make the weirdest things ever. Recently, they've really liked Super Mario Maker 2. Basically, you get to make your own Mario levels and then play them. You can also download levels like from the internet to see like what other people are making, and you can make some crazy stuff. And my one son tries really hard to like make levels that are pretty thought out and like you can actually beat. And my other son is like, how many Bowsers can I throw in this room and you will never beat this level? And so it's basically like Spikes, Bowsers, and Dad try to beat this level. And even though like, I can't beat that level, him making them, he's just laughing the whole time and having a good time. So they love those creative games. Another one that's kind of like that is, this is kind of an older game, so it's kind of hard to find. I just found a used copy on Facebook Marketplace, and they have loved it. It's Disney Infinity, which they don't make anymore. It's a PlayStation 4 copy is the one that I have. I just play on my PlayStation 5. And I got a copy of the game for $2. And then you do have to buy, it comes with this little hub thing that has to USB plug into the PlayStation. And then you have to have some of the Disney Infinity statues that go with the game. So there's like characters and level statues that kind of go chunk on that little dock. But again, I found somebody on Disney Infinity that had like 30 statues in the game and they wanted like $1 a piece. And I was like, okay, I'll take them. So you can find them secondhand pretty easily. And that's a really fun game as well, because whichever character you plop on the base just bloop goes in the game, and we're playing with all these Star Wars characters. Darth Vader and Kylo Ren are like punching each other, and then you can also make your own worlds. And my kids love to play that creative mode where they can throw down the Matterhorn from Disneyland and then, you know, run around and jump on it. And then they can play as Yoda and maybe throw like Aladdin off a cliff or something. I don't know. Just the world's your oyster. It's kind of like Disney Minecraft, but not really, because it's not blocky. So that's a fun one. My kids love that one. And they really like the little statues. Anyway, so those are a couple good ones. The other one that we've been playing recently, I've talked about this on the podcast, is I played a lot of Tears of the Kingdom with my kids recently. And they love, again, the creative side of that. Using the Ultra Hand ability to just fuse things together. They will build the weirdest things just out of wood that aren't like practical or really helpful in the game, but I connected this sword to this log, plopped it over here. And then you can also fuse things to your weapons. And it's like, Dad, I put this, what are they called? Octorok squid on my sword. And I'm like, well, that's great. It took the strength down by 20 points, but that's great. I don't know. So those are the two kinds of video games I would recommend. 2D games, especially platformers where you can play with them, like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. You can play 2 players. So I played that with them. Super Mario Wonder, I think you can play 4 players. So most of these games you can play alongside them. And then games where you can be creative together. The kids they really like that, I think. Just being able to, I get to do what I want in this game. Even though it'll probably frustrate you a little bit that it's not like a clean and perfect thing they make. It's kind of fun to see what they can make too. Whew, that was a lot of talking, Devin. Anything to add there? You who has no children.
I don't think so. I think you nailed it. Just anything on the Switch. And yeah, I think the Mario Maker sounds super cool because every kid wants to show you their ideas and why they're competent, like, so that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a fun one. I especially like that one's fun to play in handheld mode because you can play it with touchscreen. Like, I want like Bowser to be here, and you just like tap, 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 tap like it's a phone to build the levels. So yeah, really cool game. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this lengthy episode of Super Game Brothers, episode number 6. Lots of news, lots of board games and video games announced, and companies buying other companies and shutting down companies. I hope you enjoy this. I love this kind of, again, behind inside baseball, learning about what goes on behind the scenes, I think is fun. And also just playing the games is fun. I love that segment at the beginning where we just talk about what we got to play. So appreciate you joining us on this journey. This has been episode number 6. We have 5 other ones, and we have an episode every week. They launch on Mondays on free feeds, so that you can listen on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You can watch it on YouTube, basically anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify. And then if you want some extra perks, check us out on Patreon. We do have the free tier on Patreon, so just come check it out. Join for free. You can just follow along, see the stuff we're posting. And then if you want to get our stuff early or right into the show, we do have those perks there as well. Make sure you check out Devin. He streams every day, every weekday on Twitch and TikTok. That's Player4 on Twitch and Player4 TV on TikTok. And yeah, just we hope you have a great week. Have a great week playing some games. Write in, let us know what you played. I'm always looking for new games to play, so love some recommendations. And everyone, play Balatro. Gosh dang it.
Yeah, play Balatro or else.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to do it for us here. We will see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.